Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Good evening, folks, and welcome to Alien Addict on this fine and delightful evening. And it is a delightful evening because we have none other than Rey Hernandez in the house again. It's been pretty much a year since we did a show together, and he was probably one of my very first live guests testing out StreamYard. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Rey Hernandez on. And Rey, if for anybody who may not know, Rey is one of the 4 co-founders of FREE, the Edgar Mitchell Foundation for research into extraterrestrials. But what brings me to Rey was a friend of mine called David who has met Rey. They've had pictures taken together. Rey may recognize this guy who wants to be completely blurred out, but people will have seen David on the show blurred out. And David put me on to Rey's story because it's more now for anybody that knows me from starting Alien Addict, being an atheist, and becoming something completely different and looking into the paranormal. This is what I love about Rey, because Rey is one of these people who was an atheist, and he dabbles in the UFO research, but he's also very much there in the paranormal, and that's what gets my that's what gives me the heebie-jeebies. Without further ado, Rey Hernandez, welcome back to Alien Addict. How are you doing?
Well, Ali, that was a little unusual presentation you introduced me with.
There's nothing normal about me, Rey.
Okay, sounds good. But no, it's wonderful because what most major contact experiencers, UFO contact experiencers, realize is that this phenomenon is not a material phenomenon. They might have seen a few UFOs, even called them down. They might have seen a few physical beings, but the overwhelming majority of their experiences are a vast cornucopia of paranormal experiences. That's what this phenomenon is all about. And that's my case as well. And so, and that's what the data shows from our 5-year academic research study. By the way, the name of the organization is the Dr. Edgar Mitchell FREE Foundation. And FREE stands for the Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial and Extraordinary Experiences. And then the term extraterrestrial pretty much is a misnomer of what is happening with the UFO contact phenomenon. But I'll take you step by step,
Yeah.
Ask me the questions.
Rey, nobody's ever done what you guys have done before when it comes to doing this research. Nobody.
Correct. No one. Let me give you some background about that. Okay. My first experience started in the living room. It was a joint experience with my wife, and really a crazy experience that, that's what I was thinking back then. Now it's not crazy. Now it's, for experiencers, it's quite normal. Okay. But basically, there was an energy being that appeared in our living room. My wife interacted with it, calmed me down. We were ready to put our dog to sleep. Our dog was totally paralyzed since the night before at 8:00. We had an appointment that afternoon to bring her to the vet. Nina, correct, yes.
Same name as my wife's old dog. My wife's from Ecuador.
Oh, wow, look at that.
Yeah.
Same name, yeah. Well, our dog was 15 years old. Before she became paralyzed, she was very, very ill. She couldn't run. She couldn't jump. She was very lethargic. Just picture like a 95-year-old lady, That was our dog. And she was family, so we try to keep her alive and give her the best quality of life. So my wife began to pray all night. Okay, she was from Mexico, one of these people that are born and raised in the church. So that morning, after praying all night, the dog woke us up at 6. The dog was still paralyzed. So I went back to bed. My wife carried her down the stairs, see if she can go to the bathroom. And that's where she encountered that being in the living room. She then began to call me, and I didn't respond. And she went upstairs. She hauled me down, and boom, my wife disappeared in front of me with the dog. And then this energy being totally controlled my mind. Okay. Basically put thoughts in my mind to say, what I'm watching is not important. I waved my hand at it and I said, bullshit, this is what you got me up for this crap. I'm going back to sleep. I turned around, went up the stairs, and then almost an hour later, when I woke up, I was now fully cognizant. I ran down the stairs, and poof, my wife reappears again, and the dog is running around the entire living room, fully healed. And I'm skipping a lot of steps here, obviously. But then
Ray, we did, and anybody can go back and watch the story from the first time.
And then basically, my wife began to call down UFOs. She would be praying outside, okay, and boom, they would appear, these huge UFOs. So that's what I knew was UFO related. And so then I called down a UFO, and which in 15 minutes appeared, but it was I prefer the term UAP because most people do not see a physical object, and it was it was the size of a football stadium, out there in the UK. You picture Wembley Stadium or something like that. Yep. It was like right on top of your next door neighbor's house, and that was witnessed by my 10-year-old daughter and these 3 adult friends. That lasted for over an hour, and it wasn't far away. It was like you can get a rock and hit the bottom of this object. That's how close it was. And then after that began almost 4 years of nonstop paranormal experiences. You name it, I had it. And mind you, I was a professor for 6 years. I went to Cornell University for a master's. I went to Berkeley for a PhD, and I've been working for 22 years as an attorney with the Department of Treasury. I'm like the last person you would expect that these things to happen to. And then, so what happened is I began to do what is called an academic literature review, because I do have an academic background, to see what has been written academically about this phenomenon of the UFO contact experience. And what I soon realized was that statistically, almost nothing. There were a few minor studies of like 50 people. There were like 3 major studies, I would say, that had at most 50 people. And that was it. And they only asked a few questions, like 50 questions. So I said to myself, we know almost nothing about this phenomenon, almost nothing. All that is out there is all this bullshit stuff of hypnotic regressions. People like David Jacobs saying that he's never met anyone that's had a positive experience. Okay. And yet all the people that I've subsequently, spoke with later on, the vast majority of them had positive experiences. While it might have been an ontological shock, because it totally destroys your reality, your concept of reality. Okay. And the vast majority of the experiences that I heard from other people were not negative. Okay. So I'll skip over how the organization was started. I don't know if I talked about that or not.
Yeah, we got up to in the last the interview. I mean, you are getting onto your second book, but this is the first book that is already out.
Yeah.
And you did say to some of my guys to send you an email, and you would send them pages if they wanted it for like a sample.
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, I'll give half of that book away for free. That book right there, Beyond UFOs. It's 820 pages.
It's a big book.
Yeah, it's a huge book. What happened was, what a lot of people don't realize that are not major experiencers is that these experiences are orchestrated. Okay, just how they gave me spirituality is through a series of near-death related experiences. 3 days in a row. The very first 3 people I ever mentioned NDEs to, all of them had NDEs. Okay, the way the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation got organized, it got organized over a 48-hour period. Okay, and starting with Mary Rodwell getting an email that I had sent her 6 months before, and the email that I sent her just popped on her computer screen the day that I had a major out-of-body experience while I was driving my car in the middle of a traffic jam. Okay, so then we spoke to like 1:30 in the morning because she's in Australia, and I said, "Look, Mary, I got to go to work tomorrow." Okay, then the next day I get a phone call. "Hello, is this Rey Hernandez?" I said, "Yes, who's this?" "Dr. Rudy Schild." Rudy Schild is an emeritus, a retired professor of astrophysics from Harvard University. Yeah. And just for people to know a little bit of his background, 3 years before Stephen Hawking said he was wrong about black holes, yes, Rudy Schild said he was wrong about black holes, okay? And published like 20 papers about how Stephen Hawking was wrong, finally Hawking admitted that he had been incorrect. Okay, so this man is calling me at 9:30 in the morning. I'll skip over all the details because it's very lengthy. And then he gave me the telephone number of what he said was his mentor. I said, well, who's your mentor? And he goes, Dr. Edgar Mitchell. Okay, the sixth man to walk on the moon, the founder, more importantly, of the Institute for Noetic Sciences, which is one of the world's leading premier institutions that's studying consciousness and ESP. Okay, so Edgar founded that in 1972. And so here I was 48 hours later at the home of Edgar Mitchell. Okay. And it was right there. That's the picture of it right there. And so I subsequently went to his house over 20 different times. And it was at his home where he said, look, Ray, you need to implement what they told you. Okay. And I'm not going to go into those details, but basically it was a very elaborate experience that happened to me. And so he said, look, you need to form a foundation. I will be your scientific advisor. Rudy Schild I already spoke with Rudy. He will also join in. And I have a whole team of PhD physicists, this organization that he founded called Quantrack. They will help you out. And so here I was leaving his house like, this man is batshit crazy, talking like that, when I had no idea what had happened to me 48 hours earlier. I was still just digesting it. So
you even still thought that even though the guy's been on the moon?
No, because he was saying you have to implement what your ETs told you.
Yeah.
And here is like your ETs, like he's got his own bunch of ETs. And it's like they gave you a mandate of what you needed to do. And so, my mindset wasn't into that. I was still a hardcore rationalist, materialist. I was trying to understand my experiences. Okay. And here's this man talking like a crazy man, And so what I realize now is that this man was a sage and that he spoke with hundreds of experiencers. Okay. I've spoken with many people that have been to his house. These are major experiencers that he would, that pass by and he would say, come by, let's chat. And he would listen to these people. So this man is like, was a genius.
You became very close.
We came very, very close. Yeah. And so afterwards, I told Mary Rodwell, I sent her an email and I told her what happened immediately after I spoke with her. That was, I spoke with Rudy Schild, the professor from Harvard, extensively, and then Edgar Mitchell. And both of them told me that they would help me out. But I told them I have no idea what I'm going to be doing. And then I said, well, if I do find out what I'm going to be doing, would you like to join us? And she said, yes. So that's how you get the 4 co-founders. That Saturday morning, I woke up and I knew instantaneously what we'd be doing, the purpose, okay, for the organization. And that is to conduct the world's first academic, comprehensive, statistical research study of UFO contact experiencers. Why? Because in my experience that I had, I was brought to another reality and I was shown what I now call the contact modalities, that all of the paranormal, humans are studying them a separate and distinct phenomenon. But in actuality, it's all one phenomenon. Why? Because consciousness is primary. We are living inside a greater reality. Okay? What we perceive to be our reality, this physical 4D experience, is not the true reality. It's much more complex than that. And what I found out later was many of the early pioneers of quantum physics, Heisenberg, Schrodinger, Erwin Schrodinger. I always mispronounce his name.
I'm glad you said that because I couldn't say it.
Niels Bohr. These are all Nobel Prize winners. Okay, the early pioneers of quantum physics. They all said that consciousness is primary. Okay, and several other. One other Nobel Prize winner in physics said the same thing in that age, and then subsequently there have been many others, Nobel Prize winners in physics that have said the same thing. That consciousness is primary, that our reality is, for lack of a better term here, time to elaborate, an illusion, okay? And so I was given all of that information in that experience. So I said, we need to be able to understand this phenomenon because for near-death experiences, we do have a lot of data. A lot of books have been written about near-death experiences. OBE certainly has been studied much, much more greatly in depth than UFO contact. UFO contact, there was zero, okay? The work that Dr. John Mack did, okay? his last book, Passport to the Cosmos, was about 15 different case studies of 15 different individuals. That's it. Nothing statistical. He just illustrated what's happened to these 15 people. That's all you had in ufology,
And how many people have taken your test now?
That survey was almost 4,400 people from over 125 countries, and that's just in the English language survey. We did the survey also in Spanish. We had over 1,000 people to take our survey in Spanish. We had in German, we had close to 350 people take it in German. Slovak, again, a large number, because the person that was running that survey was very, very active.
I know you was looking at getting China involved in this.
We had the whole translation of the 3 surveys into Chinese. Okay, we spent a very long time, but the people that helped me out initially, they backed out because they saw the work that this was going to entail. This is a full-time job pretty much for several years. And so, but we have it in Chinese. I would like to get it in Chinese. But basically, what we spent 9 months developing the survey. And this is with a team of close to 10 PhD professors, okay, retired professors, together with very, very famous people in ufology. Kathleen Martin, who just won an award for the International UFO Researcher of the Year. No, Lifetime Achievement Award, okay? She was part of a group. Mary Rodwell, Barbara Lamb, Dr. Leo Sprinkle, who just passed away. He was like 93 years old. He was the first academic to ever write an academic article about UFO contact, okay? And like 3 or 4 other, well-known names in the field that were researchers. They were not academics. So we put together the academics on one side, and the people had the boots on the ground, okay, studying the contactees and the abductees. And we put them together, and they said, okay, how do we go about finding out what the hell's going on with this phenomenon? So we spent 9 months, and we developed 3 surveys. 2 of them were quantitative, like yes or no from A to B, where you check off boxes, that sort of thing. And then the last one was 70 open-ended questions, where we asked a generic open question, and they got to respond in writing to that question. So it was 70 of those questions. So we wound up with more than 10,000 pages of writings to those 70 open-ended questions. Then became the monstrous project of collecting that data and analyzing it. We spent 1.5 years analyzing that data. We advertised the surveys for 3 years. It was all over radio shows, all the paranormal radio shows, all the UFO, the abduction radio shows, from the love and light crowd to like, these are wicked, horrible, evil beings, to all these shows, to Facebook, all over Facebook. Repeatedly, every couple of weeks, we would put postings on Facebooks to over 500 sites. Mailing lists, we had 8,000 names to a mailing list. They got these repeated mailings. So that's why we had so many people that responded to it. And if I could say very, very quickly what the findings were. Naturally, with a study that's so large, that's 820 pages.
Ray, it's your show. You deliver what you want to deliver, my friend.
You could go on and on with pages, but let me just show people that this is not a Mickey Mouse study here, okay? This is a book here, and you see the 3 professors that were over here, Rudy Schild, myself, and Dr. John Klimo. And as you can see how thick this book is, okay? It's thick as hell, okay? And in terms of pages, what is it? 776 pages of writings, okay? Not including, the table of contents and all this other stuff. So this is a monstrous book, and it's got lots of, as you can see, graphs. It's got pie charts, bar graphs, okay? So this is tons of data, okay? So we all, here's a good one here with a little pie chart, and this table there on the side. Let me just read this table here. This one is, did ET contact experience change your life in a negative or a positive way? Okay, so we had highly positive, slightly positive, neutral, slightly neutral, slightly negative, or highly negative. Okay, highly negative was only 4%. Okay, that's it.
So
And the
4% of over 4,000 people had a negative
4,400
experience.
viewed it as highly negative. In terms of slightly negative, it was 6%. That's it. Okay, highly positive, 51%, slightly positive, 22%. And when you look at how it changed them, we had a question since my first initial contact, UFO contact experience. Okay, what increased? So these are strongly increased or increased slightly. My desire to help others, my compassion for others, my appreciation of the ordinary things of life, my sensitivity to the suffering of others, my concern with spiritual matters, my desire to achieve a higher consciousness, my appreciation of nature, my spiritual feelings, my concern with the welfare of the planet Earth, my understanding of what life is all about. Okay, my personal sense of purpose in life, my concern with ecological matters, my conviction that there is life after death. People no longer fear death. Okay, my acceptance of others. Okay, now let's look at what decreased. Okay, again, we're talking the percentages are between 75 to 95%. Okay, for all of these statements that I'm making. Okay, increased. What decreased? My concern with material things in life. All of a sudden, you didn't need a new Mercedes Benz every year. Okay, you could take the old car out, and if it's working, it's fine. My interest in organized religion, like my wife. Okay, we every Sunday we had to go to mass, and every Thursday we had to go to group prayer meetings. You know, like you're in a Pentecostal church. You know, hallelujah, hallelujah. Okay, well that stopped with my wife. Okay, my wife still goes occasionally to church. Okay, but not like before. So she became much more spiritual and less religious. Not that it
See, a
completely
lot of
went away.
people mix those two things up,
No, those
spirituality
are
and
two,
religion.
yeah, two
Yeah,
different things. Yeah. Uh,
completely.
the other thing is my competitive tendency. All of a sudden, you didn't want to stomp down your colleague at work so you can get ahead. You know, competition is not important anymore. My fear of death decreased. You no longer fear death. My desire to become well known, to become famous, decreased. My interest in achieving material success and becoming wealthy decreased tremendously. So what you this is just a page that I pulled out, okay, from my book, but that's just an example of the book. And what we get here is a complete transformation of the individual. Same thing happens with near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences. Same thing. There's a book. As a matter of fact, we took those questions that I read right now from a book that was published in 1992. It was a book published by one of the early pioneers of near-death experiences. His name is Kenneth Ring, Dr. Kenneth Ring. He was a professor at the University of Connecticut. It was him and Bruce Grayson and Raymond Moody were like the pioneers in near-death experiences. There's Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, whatever, but I would say those four were the pioneers. Okay, well, Kenneth Ring published. He did a study in 1992 where he compared 85 people that had NDEs to 85 people that had UFO, primarily abduction experiences. There were some contactees that didn't view it as negative, but most of them were abductees. Okay. Well, guess what? The two groups changed exactly the same way. Okay. He didn't expect that. Okay. And exactly the same way from those questions that I read. And there were a total of 60 questions overall. And so it was once I read that book, then I said, I need to incorporate those questions because that's just 85 people that he had. Okay. And so our book has tons of questions, even paranormal related questions. So let me go into the findings, the four major findings, very briefly.
I find it interesting
Yeah.
when you say NDEs because I myself I died when I was a baby. My dad had to bring me back to life.
Oh, wow.
I've seen strange things, call it apparitions, told my mum from an early age that I can't remember now. I've
Yeah.
seen.
Well,
I
what
think
it
everybody's
is,
seen lights. I've seen everybody's seen lights in the sky.
yeah.
But it's interesting that you are linking all of this as
Well,
one thing.
this is what we found out in our research study. That's why I'm going to be going into the details in a minute. But these paranormal contact modalities trigger other ones. So if you had an NDE early in life, you're going to be having paranormal experiences throughout your life. If when you were young, you popped out of your body, you had out-of-body experiences, you're going to be later on seeing ghosts and spirits. You're going to be seeing UFOs. Okay. That's just part of the trend. Okay. If you've had UFO encounters when you were younger, boom, you're going to be seeing ghosts and spirits. You're going to be popping out of your body, you know. You're going to be having these paranormal experiences later on. It's later on I'll get into that, but that's a relationship that major experiencers will tell you about, okay? And that no one knows about. Ufology is totally clueless about these things. Why? Because all they care is about the latest TikTok video, you know, and the latest metal that we discovered out in the desert of Sedona or some bullshit like that, you know.
The metamaterials.
You know, please, this stuff is way, way more complex than the bullshit that you get in ufology, okay? Let me go over the four major findings, okay? Out of those 4,400 people, in order for you to take that survey, okay, you have to, first of all, have physically seen a UFO, or what is commonly called a UFO. But in our book, we use the term UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena. Why? Because the vast majority of what people are seeing are not a physical craft. They're not a flying saucer. Like what I saw was not a physical object. It was a totally different object that when I said in my mind, because my friends were three adult friends, that when they came and they saw this thing, they started to question it, right? So
just quickly there, Ray,
yeah.
How long have you used the term UAP for? Because that seems to be something that's only started to become in the UFO world to somebody who may not know about UFOs quite recently. Have you used the term UAP for quite a long time?
In the very beginning, I used UFOs because I didn't know anything about the phenomenon. Okay. But then later on, after you talk to tons of individuals, after you talk to the researchers, you know, Kathleen Martin, Mary Rodwell, Barbara Lamb, Leo Sprinkle, Edgar Mitchell, all these people that knew about the phenomenon, a lot of them, they use the term UFO so people know what they're talking about. Thank you, Jennifer. So
Jennifer's a lovely lady.
They use that term UFOs because how are you able to understand what people are saying? So that, like now on this radio show, I've used the term UFO, but technically the vast majority of people are seeing everything but a physical UFO. Okay, like in my case, the very first time I called down this object, okay, it was comprised of hundreds of oblong streaks of light that formed the whole shell of the craft, and inside was all this white plasma moving about. And then my friends began to question what this was. And then after like 2 minutes, I busted out laughing. And in my head, I told this intelligence, because I don't even call them beings. Beings is like connotate something physical, okay? I told this intelligence, you better come up with some fucking better shit than this because my friends don't believe you. Instantaneously, what we were watching was totally replaced by something totally different. Now what we were watching was hundreds of stars, but large stars, not these little tiny things in the sky that were inside that area of that object that I was watching. And they were all blinking on and off, on and off, on and off, all of them, okay? And then they would take turns by sections, powering up to get big, and then they will power down to get small, you know? And after that, my friend stopped trying to explain it away, okay? So that's an UAP, okay? It's an unidentified aerial phenomenon. It's not a physical craft. And it matches what many of us think, that these are holographic projections that we're watching, okay? That these are not necessarily a physical object. That here I was with my mind. I said, you better come up with some better bullshit than this, you know? Boom, that thing gets wiped out and something else takes its place, okay? Dr. Joseph Burks, who is an experiencer, a major experiencer himself, has been calling down UAP since 1992. He wrote a paper which started from a conversation that he and I had like over 5 years ago, because we both have the same hypothesis. These are holographic projections from our virtual reality. And so I asked him, look, Joe, you know, I'm a full-time attorney with the IRS. I'm trying to work on a documentary. I'm getting this new book up and running. I said, would you be willing to write an article for the book about what we've been talking about? It took him 3 years to do it, but he wrote it up. Very, very detailed, comprehensive, fascinating, okay? And I'll give that to people for free if they want it, okay? Just send me an email. The email is info@experiencer.org. Info, I-N-F-O, at experiencer, E-X-P-E-R-I-E-N-C-E-R So I'll send you half of that book and let's say 3 chapters from the new book titled A Greater Reality. So let me get back to the major findings from our research study. Okay, no, from the first one, from the Beyond UFO.
Yeah. I'm just showing the new book that's coming out.
Okay,
A Greater
yeah.
Reality. That's
Hopefully
in January.
February 1st is the goal. The latest March the 1st.
I've linked the old book down below, and I've also put the website for people to check out for when it goes live.
Beautiful. I'm giving this stuff
updated
for free. I'm giving it for free. So please take advantage of it. If you really want to get educated about the complexities of this phenomenon, this is not, about materialism and material UFOs or anything of those sort. It's not about ghost hunters, and all that crazy crap that you see on TV. This is way, way, way more complicated. And not to say that I have the answers to it. No, all I'm doing is just relaying what research has revealed. Okay. Number one major finding, we wanted to find out whether these experiences were positive, negative, or neutral. Because if you go to the internet, if you go to websites, if you go to Facebook, if you go to all these UFO conferences, they have these so-called experts, but they're not experiencers, and they're not even researchers, and these people that hypnotize people, and all of a sudden, the aliens are going to conquer the world. They're creating hybrid babies all over the world. They're going to take over for us, So that's the bullshit that you hear all over the place on the internet and these UFO conferences. Well, we asked that question, whether it was positive, negative, neutral, in many different ways, because people that do surveys, they will tell you, depending how you phrase a question, you'll get a different response. So we asked over 25 different ways. Like what I read before, remember a couple of minutes ago, that was one question. But we asked another question, like, if you could stop your experiences, would you stop them? Well, 84% said no, keep it coming, baby, keep it coming. I don't want them to stop. So if this was just so horrible and negative, would you expect like 99% of them to say yes? No, it was the total opposite. These people don't want it to end. We even asked the questions for the different types of beings. Okay. We had like 12 different beams.
Yeah, is it the light, the plasma beam that is the number one?
The number one type, yeah, we asked 12 different types of categories. And then we had a category called other, okay? Other was actually, almost 40% because it wasn't in those 12 categories. What people saw was really thousands of different types of beings. You name it. As a matter of fact, I was speaking with this experiencer a couple of minutes ago before I hooked up, and I told her the same thing. And I said, and I picked out the most weirdest category. I said, people even saw these big, gigantic blobs of that looked like mucus that were on the wall. It was like several feet across round blobs of like mucus-looking intelligence that was communicating with them. She goes, "You got to be kidding, Ray. You got to be kidding. No. You just. How did you know that happened to me?" So it's like, these are things that people don't talk about because it's just so crazy. But even things like that, people have seen owls, all different shapes. They've seen all different types of birds, different colors. Someone beaks with no beaks, felines. You name the feline, they saw.
Oh, I interviewed a guy who had intercourse with a feline alien.
Well, the intercourse stuff is we get almost very few or none of those. I think that's highly suspect. I think what it is that they were playing mind games with them.
So,
but anyway,
the Greys were number 3.
Yes,
am I right?
Number one type of being that people described was the energy being. That's a broad category. It's basically in its intelligence, that's a form of an energy. That's not a humanoid looking type of being. There were other humanoid looking types of beings that did radiate it with energy. That's a separate category. But we left up to the person whether to put it in the human looking, category or the energy being type of category. So the energy being came out at 55%. Okay. The human looking being came up at 52%. Okay. So it looked human, but there's difference in sizes. Okay. Difference in colors. Okay. We had beings that were, African American looking. Some were Asian looking. There were some that were like like the Palladian beings, with the blonde hair, the blue eyes, and the skin tight suit. But the vast majority of them, the overwhelming majority, they were tall, like 7 feet tall, and they had like the tunics, like they would wear in the Middle East at the times of Christ. I don't know the exact name for that,
I know what you mean.
That type of a dress. There were some that had more like Roman-looking type of tunics, okay? And that actually is what the vast majority of people that have near-death experiences, what they see, okay? They see these beings, they're a human-looking being. They're like...
That would explain the Grim Reaper.
Well, I don't know
the whole cloak-looking thing.
Oh, yeah, that was
makes sense.
The cloaks with the hoods. The vast majority of the colors were white, but there were some that were dressed in brown, monk's robes, tons, I mean, of cloak that way, and again, very similar to near-death experiences, what people are describing. Okay,
for personal reasons, and also for a lot of the people that he interviewed, where did shadow figures come on that chart?
Again, remember I described there are like tens of thousands of different types of beings that people are seeing. You name it, people have described it in our open-ended questions. Okay, now I had several encounters with shadow beings. The most memorable one was I was on a Skype call with 2 volunteers that were support volunteers, people that were really distressed and needed people to talk to. And these 2 individuals were licensed mental health therapists. Okay, so these were licensed psychologists, and so we were on the call. One was from Canada, one is from the United States, and all of a sudden, I saw behind me flash this humanoid being that was totally dark, and went right behind me, and it went right through the wall, the glass wall that we had, like a door. Okay, and both of them freaked out. They were like, "Ah, what was that, Ray? What was that?" I said, "It's just a shadow being. Don't worry about it." Because what you learn, major experiencers learn after a certain period of time, is that these things initially are scary, okay? Because it totally rips your ontological shock of your reality. But then later on, you find out, just like people that see ghosts and spirits all the time, they're not going to harm you, They're not going to, the vast majority, I won't say all of them, but the vast majority will not harm you, They do not intertwine with our physical reality. And then what it is just shocking. Just like most of these beings that people see, the vast majority do. For example, let me give you an example of this, okay? Let me go through the different types of beings. The short grays were number 3 at 51%. The short grays only 10.5%. People said that their experience was negative. That's it. You know how many people saw short grays? Almost 1,400 people.
Wow.
Huge numbers. After that was the ghosts or spirits. That was at 47%. And then after that, underneath was the tall grays. And they were described as 6 to 7 feet tall. Just like the little short ones, but they were tall with long arms, long fingers, that sort of thing. They were at 11%. People viewed them as negative. Okay. And it was almost 700 people that saw those. Now, underneath the grays, they had the highest negativity rate. Remember, the highest number that I told you now so far is 11%. The human-looking being was 6%, was negative. But because people were shocked, all of a sudden you see this being right in front of you, only 6%, 6 out of 100, were pissing in their pants, because of the shock. But overwhelmingly, people saw it as positive. But the reptilian beings, okay, 22% viewed them as negative. That's it. 2 out of 10. Okay, a little bit more, 22%. So what we did is I looked at the open-ended questions for the people that had reptilian experiences to find out why they said it was negative. 22%. 60% viewed it as neutral. Okay, 60%, huge number. So, but I want to find out, why did those 22%? And it wasn't that the reptilian being raped their wife, ate their children, that Barack Obama is a reptilian, that bullshit that you see on the internet,
Queen, my queen.
Yeah, your queen is a reptilian, Well, what it was that Um, well, your queen might be an exception. I don't know. Okay? But what it was that these people shit in their pants when they saw that being. The vast majority of these experiences were up close. All of a sudden, it just materialized in front of them. Like you're doing something else, you turn around, and boom, within a couple of feet, you have this being, like described as 8 feet tall, the body of a crocodile, has muscles like Arnold Schwarzenegger, like 500 pounds of pure muscle. It had like a skin tight suit, people described it having a tail, and it had these little cat eyes, like up and down type of eyes, and it's literally, less than a meter in front of you, just staring at you. Okay, the vast majority of the experiences did not have telepathic communication. There were a lot that did. Okay, now mind you, there's 644 people that had reptilian experiences, huge number. Okay, but the reason why they put negative because is that they shit in their pants when they saw it, not that the being did something harmful to them. We had like 2 people that said, "Oh, the reptilian raped the shit out of me," that type of stuff, But those 2 people were like outliers,
Yeah, that I was going to ask that. How
Yeah.
many when you've got all these cases in front of you? How do you establish which ones are bullshit and which
Okay,
ones?
we asked trick questions in there. Like, for example, we use the word, have you ever heard the term crocoid or something like that? The vast majority of people answered honestly, no, never heard of it. Okay. There was a couple of people that said it and they said, okay, what does it mean? And they would, but very few, very, very few. Okay. So we asked like several of these type of questions. Okay. With the reptilian stuff, almost everybody that said it was negative, except for like 2 or 3 people, did not give any details. But you had 2 or 3 people say, "Oh, the reptilian raped me," So these are, people that had a dream or something like that, and with a reptilian and this, and that. Even though we told them only answer these questions based upon conscious, explicit memory, not upon channeling,
Yeah.
not upon hypnotic regression, not upon a lucid dream. Because those things, if we wanted to publish this academic papers later on, if you're basing it upon lucid dreams, what's the difference between a lucid dream and a real dream? What's the difference between something that you go to a hypnotic regression person, he's asking you tons of leading questions, one after another.
But some people can't tell the difference between a lucid dream and reality.
Yeah, well, a lucid dream is quite rare. Okay. And what a lucid dream is sort of very similar to like an out of body experience. Okay. Where you are consciously aware. It's like you and I are talking. Okay. And it usually doesn't jump around like a dream. Like,
Yeah.
1 minute doing this, 1 minute doing that, 1 minute. No, it's like you and I talking for 2 hours. It doesn't
Yeah.
jump around. It's quite consistent and it's quite lucid, quite conscious. And the people remember the vast majority of it. That I mean is a rough definition of a lucid dream, but just for the audience
Yeah,
members to get a sense of it. It's very similar to an out of body experience. Okay, and a lot of people have difficulty differentiating an out of body experience with a lucid dream. Okay, because the parallels associated with it. But basically, it's the conscious aspect of it, that you're fully conscious of that reality that you're in a lucid dream. Now, so we ask people not to answer based upon those things, only upon conscious, explicit memory. You have to be fully awake, okay, and you have to memorize it that way as a fully awakened experience. Now, so we even asked that question of positive, negative, and neutral for the different types of beings. Okay. Now, what we discovered asking this question in 25 different ways was that the overwhelming number, depending on the question that was asked, was between 85% to 96% said it was not a negative experience. Okay. It was not a negative experience. That question that I asked before in the beginning, was it highly positive, slightly positive, neutral, slightly negative, highly negative? We asked that question where they only got to choose 2. It's either positive or negative. None of these in betweens. Okay. And if you wanted to continue taking the test, you had to answer it one way or another. Well, what did we get? 96% said it was positive. 4% said it was negative. Okay, so these are different ways of asking the same question, just to gauge, the response. So that was the first major finding, that these experiences, not in the very beginning. In the very beginning, 37% viewed them as negative. Okay, so all of a sudden you're there vacuuming the floor, like Barbara Lamb. She had an experience with a reptilian. For Barbara Lamb, it was nothing, because she had been working with experiencers for 35 years. She was vacuum cleaning the floor. Boom, there's the reptilian right in front of her. And then all of a sudden she began to engage with it telepathically. And they had a communication going on. The being wanted to thank her for the work that she was doing. Okay.
For cleaning.
Well, she said, "Could you help me out?" After that, she was pissed off because he said no. But you see what I'm getting at, okay?
Yes, yeah.
But the vast majority of person would be totally shocked, and they would check
completely.
They would check their negative, okay? But that was in the beginning. But then later on, what we found out was that the vast majority of these people had numerous experiences afterwards. For example, 40% of the people had more than 20 experiences. Okay, 40% more than 20. Between 10 and 20, I guess, was another like 25%. So we're talking like 65% of the people had more than 10 experiences. We also correlated your perception of how you view these experiences, positive, negative, or neutral, with how many times you've had experiences. And we found out was that the more experiences you had, what happens? The more positive they become. So the experience changes. For many people that have had an abduction, that's another thing about abduction. What we discovered was only 1/3 of the people had an abduction. That's it. The other 2/3 never had an abduction. So what we found out of those people, 1/3 that did have an abduction, 80% of them now calls themselves contactees, not abductees. So these are the people that had an abduction, a forced taking, and brought to another place. Okay, these people initially were scared shitless. Then towards the end, they don't call themselves abductees. 80% of them call themselves contactees. That's where that negativity rate comes in. The vast majority of them, the people that have had abduction experiences and have only had 1 or 2 experiences. So all they remember is being paralyzed and having these primarily 3 little grays, around them, giving them a physical inspection. Okay,
so is that most of the abductions that were reported that grays are involved in what you found when it came to abductions, or could it be anything?
Yeah, well, what their primary response was these little short grays, okay? And then they would be accompanied primarily by a tall gray, okay? It would be groups of 3 or 4 short ones and a tall gray. And then occasionally you'll see a human-looking being that's with them as well, okay? Some of them describe them with a white monk's robes, others are not. Some are like energy silhouette, others are not. But the vast majority were the little ones, okay?
That's what I don't know if you're friendly with Travis, but I know you're with him in this
Travis
picture.
Walton, yeah. That's Travis Walton all the way on the left.
He described seeing the little grays, 3 of them, I believe, and that was followed by the Nordic-looking creatures.
Yes. And what's taking place is these people are having a medical inspection. Okay. Now, half of the people that took our survey, half of them reported a miraculous medical healing. Okay. Like, for example, Reverend, put that picture back up again. That last one that you had. Okay. That African-American man there, that's Reverend Michael Carter.
Yes.
He had a miraculous medical healing by a Palladian being in his living room. This was a tall being, 7 feet tall, muscular, but not like Arnold Schwarzenegger type. It's just muscle toned, very athletic, blue skin tight suit with blonde hair and blue eyes. Okay. He was released from a hospital with a blood clot in one leg. The leg was twice the size as the other. Okay. As a good reverend, he began to pray because he was in a lot of pain. Please, God, help me out. Help a brother out. I'm in tons of pain here, Boom. Before he knew it, this being materialized like in Star Trek, like Beam Me Up, Scotty. I don't know if you remember that, where they
I'm a big Star Trek fan.
Big Star Trek fan. Okay. Beam Me Up, Scotty, except they were beamed into his living room and it materialized right in front of him. This Palladian being shows up like a foot away from them or 2 feet, I guess less than a meter, okay, opens up his hand, okay, a purple orb appears. The purple orb goes into his body, okay. All of a sudden, it's like he feels it, and he's shaking, right? That being, the plating being, dematerializes again right in front of him, okay, and then he gets knocked out. When he wakes up, he said he could run a marathon. The leg was totally healed. Okay. But initially, his encounter experiences, he was paralyzed, and he was having these medical inspections, and he was these little short grays. Okay. But what happens is that these experiences then progress for the vast majority of people, not all, okay, progress into the human-looking beings to the energy beings primarily. And that's where you begin to get the healings. That's where you begin to get the lessons, mainly spiritual lessons, lessons about our cosmology, our reality. Kathleen Martin, right? One of the world's most famous people in ufology.
Yep.
Did you know, in your audience members, that she's a major contact experiencer?
I've heard this, yes, and also for anybody who doesn't know, she's Benny and Barney Hill's niece.
She came out publicly, first time, and then she was ridiculed, and then she shut up. Okay, now she's like open; she doesn't care. This is recently. Okay, this woman, okay, has had tons of positive contact experiences. She sees all these experiences now from a spiritual perspective, just like Whitley Strieber. Okay, Whitley Strieber originally wrote these horror books and then wrote horror books about his abduction experiences, all horrible books. Now he's the total opposite, Mr. Love and Light. Okay, he prays to God and thanks these beings every day for giving him spirituality. He communicates with his deceased wife. Okay, so he's typical of the people that took our survey. Like I said before, 37% viewed their experiences initially as negative. Those are mainly the abductees. Okay, but then over time, that number goes. Okay, so Whitley Strieber, my friend there, Reverend Michael Carter, Kathleen Martin, these are all examples. Kathleen was healed. Now she's public about it. I could talk about it, okay? But she's in our book. She wanted to be anonymous in our book. She was healed of a debilitating disease that she had for 20 years. It's called chronic fatigue syndrome. Where
I've heard of this.
Dead tired all the time.
Yeah.
You can't go for runs or jogs to exercise. You're always debilitated with fatigue, okay? One time, it was like a few years ago. It wasn't that long ago. Maybe 4 years ago or 5 years ago. She was like really at the bottom. She couldn't take anymore. She was in a lot of pain. And she just began to pray to these beings that she's been interacting with. She says, look, I know that you can do healings. Okay. Here I am. We've been friends. We've known each other, half of my life. Okay. If there's a time I need you now. They waited 2 days. Okay. But 2 days later, she had what can be described like a Kundalini experience, where her body began to energize and vibrate. Okay. After that dissipated, gone, completely gone, her disease. Okay.
Energy back.
As I said before, in our book, we had 50% of the people said either they or a member of their family were healed by UFO-related non-human intelligence. And we had 12 case studies in our book, okay, where we went into details with 12 different people. One person is a medical doctor that talked about his experience. This man is still a practicing physician, okay? And
Ray, did you ask them about numbers at all?
Yes. That's another huge pattern. We had, I think it was 37% of the people stated that they have gotten downloads of advanced physics or science without them having any background in it whatsoever. Okay. And it was, and then the numbers, synchronicity of it, repeated numbers and getting formulas and getting equations. Let me tell you the story of this major experiencer that nobody knows about publicly. Okay. This man is a retired DEA, Drug Enforcement Administration federal agent. I know because he's probably my best friend. Okay. He lives in Miami. Okay. I've been to his house tons of time. His wife is a PhD psychologist. Okay. He showed me all the pictures, the awards, the badges. The man was DEA all the way. And they just published a book now about how he was instrumental in capturing Manuel Noriega, because he was running airplane loads of cocaine, okay, from Colombia, okay, and they were going to Panama, and then from Panama they were being brought to the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and even to Florida, okay. So he was part of that routine. He also had a role in Baby Doc Duvalier was bringing drugs in as well into Haiti. And so, because he was in charge of the Dominican Republic, of Haiti, and other parts of the Caribbean. Okay, so this is a major player. Okay, you can't be a crazy guy doing these crazy things. Okay, but yet this guy's one of the major experiencers in the world. Okay, as a matter of fact, he had two major healings, medical healings, that were in our book. So he's one of the case studies. I already told you about the medical doctor. I told you about Kathleen Martin, very well known in the ufology field. We had my friend who's a retired DEA agent, and tons of other people that talked about their experiences of healing. And those are just 12 cases out of literally almost 1,000 cases of these medical healings. So anyway, the first question we wanted to find out whether these experiences were positive, negative, or neutral. So overwhelming with all data was that these experiences are the total opposite of what's circulating in ufology. They were overwhelmingly positive. However, as I said before, 37% initially viewed their experiences as negative. But then the vast majority of these people over time had numerous experiences. The experience changed. They became more positive. For the abductees, they started off with a medical inspection, like Reverend Michael Carter. Okay. Later on, it was like receiving spiritual lessons. Okay. And being brought to other realities, like my friend Alberto, like Reverend Carter, tons of other people, like in me, what happened to me. So over time, the experience changed and your perception of the experience changes. So that's why only 4% marked negative, where in the beginning it was 37%. So that was number one. Number two, okay, we heard all these stories from Mary Rodwell, from Kathleen Martin, from Barbara Lamb, from Dr. Leo Sprinkle, the people that had their boots in the ground, studying this for more than 30 years, each of them. And they were saying that these experiences were paranormal in nature, overwhelmingly paranormal, but they didn't have the data. They didn't have the statistics. Okay. So we asked over 60 questions associated to the paranormal, tons of questions. Well, what did we find out? Well, exactly what their suspicions were, except now we had actual numbers. Okay. Well, we discovered that while these people had seen a physical UFO, what they have seen a physical being, the overwhelming majority of their experiences, okay, were paranormal. Let me give you an example. 80% of these people described having out-of-body experiences. 80%. As I said before, 50% received miraculous medical healings. Okay. 50% said that they were brought to another reality. Okay. A matrix-like reality, like happened to me. Okay. And the reason we asked that question was not only that it happened to me, but other people in our group were saying the same thing, that this is part of the phenomena. Well, we didn't know it was that high. 50% of the people mentioned that they were brought to what people described as a matrix reality, another reality. Okay, not our 4D reality that we understand it to be. Okay, 37% had near-death experiences. Okay, 67% had seen what they described as a ghost or a spirit. Okay, out of those 67%, 60% actually communicated with that ghost or spirit. Look, it's Aunt Sally. Oh my God, it's Aunt Sally. Chill out. Tell your father, my brother, he's crying all the time for me. Tell him I'm okay. Everything is well.
So with the ghost stuff, was there a question that the ghost, the scene, are they related to the ghost?
No, many cases, no.
But they just said
they just saw it. Correct. There were many cases that were relationships within the family of that being, but other cases, like for example, that there was a medical doctor that took our survey, and she's going to be in our new book, and I'll state her name because I'm giving her chapter out for free. Again, My email is info@experiencer.org. Okay. I'll give you her chapter for free. This is a medical doctor that works in a children's hospital, saving the lives of children. She's one of the major experiencers in the world. She's had 2 near-death experiences. She's had tons of out-of-body experiences. She's seen 12 UFOs, most of them up close. Okay. She's seen Sasquatch 3 times, twice very up close. Okay. Lots of other paranormal experiences. After her second near-death experience, she began to see deceased people in her hospital. Well, and I asked her, how do you know they were deceased? Well, the guy was dressed in a hospital garb, pale as all hell. And I told him, what are you doing? You belong in your room. You look really, really sick, right? And so he looked at her like real shocked. And then he flew right into the elevator, right through the elevator doors. Okay. The doors
like it was scared.
It was like, because she like caught him, she could see him. And the guy went right through the doors, So that's just one example. There were many other examples that she described in her hospital. That was after her near-death experience. Now it's not as much as it was before. But it seemed like these experiences, for example, a near-death experience triggers, like I said before, other paranormal experiences. Okay. If you've seen ghosts and spirits when you're young, all of a sudden you're going to begin to have out-of-body experiences. Okay. Or if you have out-of-body experiences, when you're young, later on, you're going to see ghosts and spirits. You're going to be seeing UFOs. It's all part of the cycle. Orbs. 60% of these people saw orbs, not in a picture, a photo, or a video. We're talking real life, right in front of your face, orbs.
Yeah.
And we asked like 20 different questions about orbs. What did they do? The vast majority said that the orb just suddenly materialized, dematerialized. It could go through a wall, just shoot right through a wall. And so you name the paranormal question, we asked it. And huge numbers were being responded. Okay. And then once you begin to read these people's stories, in the open-ended questions, you get to see, and that's what we're having our book, in our Greater Reality, volumes 3 and 4 of A Greater Reality. These are chapters by experiencers. We have over 70 chapters by experiencers. And as you can see, these are not people that just saw a UFO or just saw 1 ghost or 2 ghosts, that sort of thing. No, these are people have had near-death experiences, have had out-of-body experiences, have seen ghosts and spirits. They've seen different types of beings. They've described seeing, tons of UFOs. So it's like it's all one phenomenon. And that's the purpose of our book. So let me then get back to the topic of the first book. So the second major finding is that these experiences were overwhelming paranormal in nature. Okay. Number three is that these experiences involve a for lack of a better terminology, a manipulation of space-time. Okay. And we asked that numerous questions associated with that. Okay. And for example, the whole issue of being brought to another reality. Okay. You're seeing a UAP right in front of you. Like in my case, all of a sudden, boom, it totally dematerialized and something new got put in its place. Okay. So there are hundreds of these types of examples, which indicate that these experiences are conscious-based phenomena. Okay. That it involves a manipulation of space-time. Okay. And we go into our book, the new book, about that topic. The other category was that these experiences I mentioned before that I read to you, okay, were overwhelmingly transformative for the positive. These people that had these experiences totally changed. Like here I was, Rey Hernandez, the world's biggest atheist. I would have put my last dollar that, Ray, I'm going to give you spirituality. I said, get the fuck out of here. It's like, no way. Right? That I was one of these type of people. Okay. And here I am. How did they give me spirituality? They gave it to me after a series of near-death related type of experiences. Okay. Which is, I don't know if in the last show I mentioned that, but it's quite elaborative, quite detailed, but it was all orchestrated. Okay. All orchestrated.
I don't know if you spoke about you having a near-death experience.
Near-death related experiences. Let me just say very, very briefly about it because it's quite in-depth. Okay. Here I am. I had called down this UAP, witnessed by my daughter, these 3 friends. There was telepathic communication that took place. Even how they got rid of me, they put in my mind that I was being attacked by hundreds of mosquitoes. Okay.
Ah, yes.
Remember, and so it was later on. My daughter goes to me, "Daddy, there were no mosquitoes outside." And it was like I woke up. It was like the hypnotist snapped his finger, and I woke up. Okay. Immediately after that, the next day, I was on YouTube. I saw my very first ever video on near-death experience. You know how you click YouTube and have all these different things you could watch? I clicked, okay, let me watch this one, and it was about near-death experiences. I then became infatuated with it. I ordered like 20 used books on Amazon on near-death experiences. They have books like for $3, $2, that type of thing. So I ordered like tons of these books. And then I started off like 4 hours a day reading them. As time went on, 6 hours a day, 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day. And I would order more books, and more books, and more books. Okay. Towards the end, towards the last month, it was like 12 to 18 hours a day. I wasn't doing any of my personal work, that I do as an attorney, because I work at my house. I wasn't doing anything. Okay. I didn't watch TV, didn't watch the internet. I didn't care about anything except near-death experiences and the physics of consciousness. Okay. And so, hold on a second, because the light is making me tear. So here I was. This is almost 4 months after I started reading these hundreds of near-death experience books and articles and things of that sort, and listening to testimonies of near-death experiencers. These 3 days: Friday, December 21st, 2012. Saturday, December 22nd, 2012. Sunday, December 23rd, 2012. And later on, months later, someone told me, "Do you know what December 21st, 2012 signified?" I said, "No." "Well, that's the day of the flip of the Mayan calendar, and I still don't understand it, because that's metaphysical stuff, and supposedly like every 26,000 years, our cosmology changes into a new hierarchy, new dimension. I really don't understand it. I'm not into metaphysics and stuff like that. But the very first one was the very first 3 people I ever mentioned on those 3 days about near-death experiences. Mind you, I was quiet the whole time. I never told anybody about near-death experiences. No one. Only my wife. And she thought I was crazy. I needed to go to a psychiatrist, So my daughter had a low-grade fever for 2 straight days. Okay. Finally, I brought her to the doctor. And my wife, whatever, couldn't do it that day, so I brought her. And then the doctor said, "I got some good news." She didn't have a fever. I checked her nose, her ears, her throat. Couldn't find any sign of infection. Maybe it was just a flu, and it's completely gone. And so immediately a robot voice came out of my mouth. "Excuse me, doctor. Have you ever heard the term near-death experiences? I've just finishing reading over 300 books on this topic. Many of them were written by medical doctors such as yourself, and it's a phenomenon that you need to know about," right? And so in my head, I was like, I'm fucking going crazy. I got another person inside of me. What the hell's going on? My wife was right. I am going crazy. I need to go to get medication. I need to go see a psychiatrist, right? And all of a sudden, the doctor's eyeballs pop out like this. And I said, "Oh my God, now this woman thinks I'm freaking crazy, I said, "Excuse me, doctor. I don't know why I said that. I apologize, And she goes, "No need to apologize. How did you know I had one?" And then in front of my daughter, she then begins and tells us, like she stopped her practice for 15 minutes. These doctors, every 5 minutes, they got a new patient in, So all of a sudden, she's telling us the details of her near-death experience, right? And Rey Hernandez, being the good atheist, I didn't make the connection with what had happened the last 4 months. Okay. The next day, as I said before, my wife forced me to go to church every Sunday. Every Thursday, we had to go to prayer meetings, and me, if I wanted dinner, if I wanted, intimacy with my wife, I had to do it. If not, I wasn't going to get nothing, And so, here I was, doing these rituals, with the Catholic Church. And then Saturday night was a dinner for the people in the Spanish ministry Okay. And it was mainly older folks, people of 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. And so she sat next to this Mexican lady, like, because she's Mexican, right? So the Mexican lady introduced me to her husband, who's Cuban, like I am, born in Cuba. And so initially we had a little small talk about, oh, what age did you come in? I came at this age, you came at that age, and where did you grow up? This and that. That lasts like maybe 2 minutes. Okay. Then immediately, excuse me, Max, have you ever heard the term near-death experiences? I've finished reading approximately 300 books about this phenomenon. It's a phenomenon you need to know about. And so in my head was like, I am fucking going crazy. There's another person inside of me. What the fuck is going on?
So
And
you
so
just felt like you needed to get that out.
no, it just came out. It wasn't pre-planned at all. It just came out, And so like when people have these induced channeling, that all of a sudden they channel something, I've heard
Yeah.
tons of experiences like that from people, from major experiencers. And so anyway, I thought I was going insane, And so Max's eyeballs pop out and he says, "Oh my God, Ray, I've never told this to anyone else, only my wife. A year ago, my mother died in my arms. I was giving her CPR. I had called 911, the ambulance, and while I was, waiting to give her the ambulance, I was, trying to revive her. The ambulance came, the paramedics came, they put her up on a stretcher, they loaded her out, and so I followed them in my car, And so it was once she got to the hospital, she was revived. She told her the story that she flew out of her body. She was on top of him, watching him give her CPR. He was crying on top of her. You told me this, you told me that, you told me that. And he said, all of a sudden, this big, heavy-set black man comes crushing through the door, followed by a short woman with a blonde ponytail. But Mom, how did you know that? Those are the paramedics. I already told you I was floating on top of you. I saw everything, And so here's this guy, Max, on a Saturday night was telling me all of this. And he went into details, And so then I said, I better tell this to my old man, because my father died about a year and a half after this, what I'm going to about tell you. Very, very sick. He was bedridden. And so I said, he's like, besides me, the world's greatest atheist. He's only been to church twice. And that was for the baptism of my two boys and my sister's wedding, and that's it. Okay. And there's always goddamn this, goddamn that, And so I said, I need to tell him what happened, so maybe when he dies with a little bit of spirituality, but I had none myself. Okay. Because I'd never made that relationship. So myself and my mother got my father dressed. We helped him in the walker. We went outside to the porch. And Miami's still, good temperature even in December. And so I began to tell him what happened on Friday, what happened on Saturday. So he goes like this, that happened to me. I go, what? Then he tells me about his near-death experience when he had open heart surgery. And like a lot of people that describe, these types of resuscitations in an operating table, he flew out of his body. He saw the doctors and the nurses all around him. And then he said a vacuum cleaner sucked him up. That was his words. I never heard anyone else describe it like that. Okay. My father said a vacuum cleaner sucked him up. And he described being sucked up, going through this tunnel, going
like a black hole.
Yeah, going through this tunnel and then seeing the light get bigger, and then all of a sudden it goes through the light. And when the light dissipated, was his father, his mother, and his deceased brother. They all look younger, okay, much younger than when they died. And then he communicated with them telepathically. Okay, he didn't use the word telepathically because he didn't know how to describe it. He just said, I communicated with them. I said, did you use your mouth? He goes, no. We just communicated, and then he says, gave me a little bit of the details out. He says, time doesn't exist. I said, what do you mean time doesn't exist? He says, because I was up there for 20 to 30 years. I said, what do you mean you were up there for 20, 30 years? He said, that's how long it took God to show me all the good things I had done in my life and all the bad things. I realized he had a life review, except he didn't know what it was called. The way he described it was that God would replay. And he was
what was God? What was God?
This big energy ball, gigantic object of energy, pure energy. And he knew it was God. Okay. This after he had the interaction with his parents and his brother. Then all of a sudden, they weren't there anymore. And this big ball of energy appeared. And then all of a sudden, like he knew it was God. and then started his life review. Okay. And after each experience, like, let me just give you an example. I forgot what age it was, but let's say 13 years old, because I forgot what it was. He said that he had a fight with another boy in the neighborhood, and he had him on the floor and he's punching the shit out of him, right? So he relived that experience, not only in his body, punching the kid, but also in the body of the kid getting punched. He relived it, relived all those emotions, okay? All the emotions on both sides. And then the energy being that he described as God, he said, well, what did you learn from that? And he also told me there is no such thing as hell because God is pure love. And I couldn't believe that was my father telling me these things, because we never had that conversation at all. Never. We never spoke about spiritual stuff, about God or let alone his NDE, any of these things, So he's telling me there's no such thing as hell. Why? Because God is pure love, And then he said, God doesn't judge. He says, we judge ourselves. Okay? We're the ones.
Did you see any patterns in the research that you did for some of the things that you'd heard in your life like this from your father that resonated with you? You thought, this is it. Somebody else has seen this.
Yeah, well, let me finish the point about the spirituality stuff. On my way home, okay, I put down my windows, and for the first time in my life, I talked to God. It's like all of a sudden I had, they say the word epiphany. It's like all of a sudden you wake up. I said, holy shit, this stuff is all real. Before I was just reading books, okay? But this is like hitting me in the face. And then what I said in my mind, there wasn't a voice, in my mind, I communicated with God and to the beings that had been interacting with me. I consider them modern angels, okay? That's how I relate to them, as modern angels. I said, I want to thank you because in a 4-month period, you've managed to totally transform an individual, totally atheist, totally rationalist, materialist, into someone that I don't have a belief. I know that I'm an eternal spiritual being. And I have that knowingness more than any Catholic priest in Miami. And for that, I want to thank you. So that was the first time in my life I ever spoke to God. And it was all like sincere with pure love, And now that I look back at it, you're like, stuff that was like obvious now, but back then you're totally oblivious to it. And in terms of when it hit me, okay, that I would consider really the pivotal point of my life. Wasn't seeing that energy being in my living room, interacting with that UFO, having that out of body experience and stuff like that. It was really going home from my father's home that I realized what it's all about. It's all about is that we're here to learn here and to make mistakes. Okay. When we die, okay, what stays back is our physical body, but what returns back is our soul or spirit. Okay. And that's the part that returns back to source. Now, eventually we reincarnate. Okay. How do I know about that? Because the NDE experiencers are talking about that. And also the UFO contact experiencers talk about that. This whole aspect of reincarnation. We documented them via their experiences. Let me just give you an example. Okay. There are literally hundreds of these types of stories. Okay. And even people that have never seen a UFO, they've just had tons of paranormal experiences and out-of-body experiences. They've had these past life type of memories. Okay. Let me just give you one really drastic, crazy example. Okay. And I'll tell you of the more common type. Okay. My friend Alberto, again, retired DEA federal agent. His wife is a PhD psychologist. Okay. Boatload of lifetime of experience. He's watching TV. All of a sudden, this Asian looking man, heavyset, okay, really chubby, in a ancient Chinese wardrobe appears right in front of him, okay, and communicates with him again. Everything is telepathic. Nothing is mouth to mouth in any of these things. With near-death experiences, with out-of-body experiences, with UFO contact experiences, that's another commonality. It's all telepathic, okay? Even you take DMT, magic mushrooms, whatever. All communication is telepathic. Okay, that's one of the major commonalities of how they're all interrelated. So all of a sudden, this being tells my friend Alberto, my name is, if I remember the name correctly, he said Guang Ho, something along those lines. He says, I was a Chinese warlord in this particular year. We're talking hundreds of years ago. Okay, you were my adopted son. Okay, your father was a pirate and he was killed in this battle, blah, blah, blah. So I adopted you when you were young. And we fought many battles together, you know, blah, 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 blah. He says, if you don't believe me, go to a major library, okay? Not one of these little libraries that you guys got here, but a major library. Look up ancient Chinese history, look up my name, and if it's a good book, it'll also mention your name. And told him his name and how to pronounce it, you know? And so, and this came about because this jade statue of that looked like him started appearing in their house. It would last for 2 or 3 days. They would put it on their living room. You know, boom, it would gone for a couple of days. Then it would be returned in a different place. So it was this game that was playing on with that statue. Then all of a sudden, that being appeared, told him all of that. He then went to the University of Miami library, asked someone to try to help him, you know, get certain books on ancient Chinese history. And he, with the help of someone else, looked up that name. His name, the adopted son name, was also there as well. Okay.
Wow.
He was like, oh my God, this stuff is real. I mean, I couldn't have made this stuff up. Here it is, you know? And then a couple of days later, a sword appeared. After this being left, they took a Polaroid picture of it. Mind you, this was in the 1980s when it was the Polaroid camera. You can't fake those things. Okay. They showed me pictures of this Polaroid camera of that sword. It was the wife that took that picture, okay? The PhD psychologist. So you know you can't have two people that are fucking mentally insane at the same time, okay? So they described that thing disappeared, you know, during the day. They were holding it. He was waving, and she didn't want to touch it because she was scared shit of it, you know. And he said it was very, very heavy, and I've got a picture of it. And then all of a sudden, they put it like in a corner of the living room while they went to do something else. When they went there, boom, it was gone. Okay, these things are called apports. He has a whole shelf, big tall shelf filled with apports. He has like 5 or 6 rings that fit him perfectly. He said one time they brought him a ring, but it wasn't his size. He was like trying to fit it in, it wouldn't go in, right? So I put it away in not where he keeps all the apports, but like in where he has his socks and stuff like that, you know. And then all of a sudden, the next day, in another place, the similar ring to that one, but it fit perfectly. Okay, so he's got necklaces, all these different designs. Unbelievable. These are called apports. Okay, for people who are not familiar with the term. And so the more common typical thing is all of a sudden someone has a dream, a lucid dream. They'll be living an entire dream, like an hour and a half, you know, nonstop. It's like you're there, but you're in the past life. Okay. And you see all the events, you describe all the details. It's like you were there, you know, and it wasn't like a normal dream that would be, you know, 5 seconds of this, 10 seconds of that, you know, 15 seconds of this, and you're jumping all over the place. This is like you're watching Spartacus on TV or some shit like that, you know. It's like so, and many people have these thoughts, these telepathic thoughts that they're doing something during the day, and these images keep on appearing, you know, very, very vivid images. That's like the more common the description of it, of the reincarnation stuff. Other people have out-of-body experiences, tons of out-of-body experiences, but yet these people are brought to a past life within the out-of-body experience.
So Ray, I know you've mentioned before, and I can't remember where I saw you say it, but I know you've been in a Netflix documentary, and you said you don't want to be associated with those people.
No, it's here I was. Let me give you a background to that, so you can understand it, where I'm coming from, and your audience members. Okay, I was going to give a lecture. I gave a lecture at the biggest conference on UFOs in the world. It's called Contact in the Desert.
Yes.
Okay, they had like 5,000 people in these 2 hotels that were joined together. So it was like a an ant nest, tons of people, okay? And half of the people had some type of paranormal experience.
I know one of the organizers of that.
Oh yeah, I know the lady. I know the owner of that. She's a wonderful lady, and she sympathizes totally with me. She understands that consciousness is primary, okay? That we're living in a greater reality, that all the paranormal are all interrelated. I mean, she's like, she thinks just like me, okay? But in order to bring people to that conference, you have to bring the ancient alien folks, that guy with the big head, popping out, whatever.
Told you, yeah.
You have to bring, Corey Good, David Wilcox, okay? So here they had a huge auditorium there. It was like 2,500 people or something like that at this huge complex, okay? Corey Good and David Wilcox, they had to throw people away. They filled up that whole damn auditorium, okay? Now, Rey Hernandez, who did the world's first ever academic research study on real contact, okay, with over 4,400 people that had, contact experiences that were primarily paranormal, but yet the UFO stuff. So when they used the term contact in the desert, my study was about real fucking contact, okay? Guess how many people I had attended my lecture? Not even 30, okay? Not even 30 people, okay? But yet, this other guy, that his name is Daryl Sims, the alien hunter, okay, who claims that he had a shotgun, he would sees an alien right in front of him, he'll blow his head off, okay? That guy had a long line. Why? Because he had like a sword, he had a knife, he had like a fake gun, and, all these props on his desk, and he had like so-called like a fake nail of an alien and all that bullshit, So all these people, oh, he's got an alien nail, and all of this crap, okay? That guy had like a long line, people to buy his books and to, and to talk to him, okay? Me, I think I sold like 2 or 3 books at that whole conference. And my objective here is not to sell a freaking book. I don't make any money out of this shit. This thing is 800 pages. So, I got to sell it like, for the cost of manufacturing it, And so it's getting the word out, getting the message out. But that just tells you where the state of ufology is at. Okay. It's a whole bunch of fucking bullshit. Okay.
This is what I wanted to ask you.
It's a ufology. It's misinformation and disinformation. That's what you get at. Why? Because our research findings totally contradicts what is circulating in ufology. Okay. You go to these UFO conference. First of all, most of these speakers, you got that British guy who headed the UK group that's studying UFOs. I met him personally twice. Very nice man when you're talking to him, okay? But the man is a strict materialist. To him, it's like it's a physical fucking craft. And the important stuff is people that see it, the pictures that are taken, the videos that are taken, and that's it. Okay? When it talks to the experiencer aspect of it, the paranormal aspect of it, no, I want nothing to do with that. That's all bullshit.
What do you make of Lou Elizondo?
The man works for military intelligence. Once you work there, you never leave it. Okay? He still maintains relationships with all these people that supposedly have retired from military intelligence. Okay? He knows all these people. He works with them. Okay? And he's trying to get word out that UFOs are real. Okay? Because they're trying to get money to study these things. Right now, underneath the table, you might have these other underground projects that are researching this and studying this. But he wants to be able to get the word out, publicly. Okay? But his mindset is still as a materialist. Okay?
Yeah.
It's still as a materialist. And a lot of people believe that the federal government knows so much more than people that have been involved in the field of working with contact experiencers. No. These people are even more clueless. Okay. For example, this guy, Richard Dolan. Okay. Here we had our organization. We had like 10 PhD scientists. Okay.
Yeah. Didn't he said something about your work.
Yeah. He called it woo-woo science. First of all, the man is not a scientist. Secondly, he's not even a PhD. Okay. He's not an academic. And yet here's this guy who majored in history, who's not a researcher of the contactee phenomenon, okay? Not a PhD, right? Calling our work woo-woo science when we had Dr. Rudy Schild, astrophysicist from Harvard University. We had Claude Swanson, PhD in physics from Princeton University. Bob Davis, okay, PhD neuroscientist. Dr. Glenn Ryan, PhD in biochemistry from the University of London. Okay. Dr. Massimo Teodorini, PhD in astrophysics in Italy, professor in Italy from the University of Bologna. I could go on and on and on with some of these names. Okay. But yet this man published a book last year titled The Alien Agenda. This guy's fucking totally clueless as to what the alien agenda is. Okay. Why do I say this? Because he came out publicly and he supported the work of David Jacobs. He's saying David Jacobs is the best researcher in this field. And for the folks that do not know who David Jacobs is, over 35 years, he's been one of these people that goes to every freaking UFO conference. He's been invited to speak, just like Richard Dolan. There isn't a UFO conference that Richard Dolan is not invited. Okay. And he said that the work of David Jacobs is the best. No one comes close to him. Well, what does David Jacobs say? That he's never met not one experiencer that's ever had a positive experience. Not one. Okay. Well, what does our study of 4,400 people show? The exact opposite. Why? Because at most he's worked over these 35 years, and he stated this publicly. I'm not inventing this. Just listen to his interviews. At most he's worked with 200 people. Now, what does work mean? Work means that you find out someone that's had a negative experience. Okay. Anyone that comes to you with a positive experience, no. Go work with Kathleen Martin, work with Leo Sprinkle, work with Mary Rodwell, work with Barrow Lamb. But if someone is totally scared of these things, he'll sit you down and he'll what is called hypnotic regression. He'll regress you. But we have seen tapes of his hypnotic regressions. One leading question after another. Okay. For example, another one is Bud Hopkins. Reverend Carter, who you saw in that picture that we posted before, that African-American gentleman. Okay. He was hypnotically regressed by Bud Hopkins and so many of these other people. And he said it's like
the Reverend was.
The Reverend, but tons of people who work with Bud Hopkins and David Jacobs, they would say that their experience was maybe at most neutral. Okay. But they would like leading them into this negativity by asking all these leading questions. Like, for example, the alien, did it rape you or did it just beat the shit out of you? Which one was it? You know? So it's like, you know, it was leading questions where it led you in a certain direction because that's their viewpoint to begin with. Okay. And our approach was totally different. Said, no, we don't want lucid dreams. We don't want channeling. We don't want hypnotic regressions, just based upon what you remember. Okay. And we got the data from statistical, quantitative questions and from open-ended questions where they got to write out the details of their experiences. So it was in many different ways. And we asked hundreds of different questions. And we asked that question of positive, negative, and neutral, as I said before, in numerous ways. Okay. So, but yet that is what ufology is. That's the mindset of ufology. That's what Richard Dolan said. This guy's the best. Someone that has said that all these experiences are horrible, they're negative. And yet Richard Dolan is like the godfather of ufology. Every documentary this guy appears in, like he's the world's leading authority. Okay. He just came out with this book, as I said before, The Alien Agenda. Like he knows what's the alien agenda. Okay. The guy's fucking clueless. Okay.
Well, you don't even claim to know what the agenda is.
No, we don't even know what fucking questions to ask. Okay. We don't even, it's like you saying, okay, tell me what is God? Okay. And how does God interact with us? Well, you can ask a religious person, they'll give you a religious response. Okay. But someone that doesn't come at it from a religious perspective, they'll say, we're totally clueless. We're dealing with consciousness. No one has an idea of how this works. We have hypotheses of how it might work, consciousness. Okay. But in terms of like, the alien agenda, I know what that shit is. Please. Oh, this man makes a living out of that bullshit. He makes a living by going to these UFO conferences. He doesn't work like me. I got a job. I'm an attorney. I don't need money. I don't need to sell these books. You know what I'm saying? To pay my bills. Okay. I'm doing this because, I used to be an academic. My mindset is an academic. I've worked with a very large group of academics. We're trying to understand this academically from a scientific viewpoint and also from the consciousness-based viewpoint. Okay. From a lot of people that are studying consciousness from an academic perspective. That's how we're approaching it. But I don't need to sell not one book. Okay. What we're trying to do is to educate humanity of the complexities of this phenomenon. That is not just about UFOs. It really is about all of the paranormal. And all of the paranormal is associated with the nature of our reality. Okay. About consciousness, that we're living inside this grander reality. And that's where our next book come into play. And if you like, I could transition into the discussing the next book.
Definitely, Ray. One thing I would like to ask you before we do that, and I kind of touched on it.
I'm sorry if I'm cussing too much, but
no. Listen, you're an alien addict. You can do what you like. YouTube, YouTube just seems to leave me alone when it comes to that.
All right,
it's over 18s, Ray. I have a glass of wine every show. You should have joined. Did you ask a question to those 4,000 people?
Almost 4,400.
If they see a specific number?
No, we didn't ask that question. Okay. What we did is we asked this question: have you had science and downloads of science and physics of information that you just you have no basis to, no knowledge or understanding? And if you did check that question, then there was an open-ended question for you to write the details of that. And that's where we got to see the details. And there's tons of experiences who will say, look, I see 1111 all the time. Or
that's what I was getting at. I've noticed you have the 1111, and my good friend Goofon, who is in the chat, he sees, who's just said Dolan is useless now. You need to go on Goofon Radio. Very good friend of mine.
Tell him to invite me. I'll be there.
I'll tell him to. I'll tell him to invite you. He sees 1111 all the time, and I see the number 33.
That's the most common number, the 1111. But in terms of what you see in the back, the zeros and the ones, those are binary codes, and that stands for information. Bits, binary bits, because the nature of our reality, almost all of our scientists will say, especially the cosmologists, okay, will say that. Well, I won't go into these heavy-duty discussions, but basically that our reality is an information-based reality, okay, and it's based upon binary codes. That's how information is coded in our reality. So that's why I use that as a background there. But yes, that whole aspect of numbers, certain people, it might be not 33, it might be another number that they just all of a sudden they get triggered. They see that, they get triggered. Like when they see it on a bus or on the license plate or something like that, it's like all of a sudden these are triggering numbers. And the best way I could explain it is the hypothesis that I have and many other experiencers is that when you interacting with this non-human intelligence that we just don't understand, okay, they are giving us downloads, okay, and they're giving it to us in compressed formats, okay. So that number 33 might be a whole symbolism for something else, okay. It's like a whole encyclopedia of information. But the way you're getting it is in the format of a number. I'm not articulating myself correctly, but
no, I understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, is that these are forms of compressed download of information, data of information, and other experiences feel exactly the same way. As a matter of fact, this lady that I just spoke with, she's a major experiencer, and I think we were talking about that. She mentioned a specific number as well. Even today, there's no coincidences. So it was like your question was like off of a discussion that we had a few hours before I met you. And so yes, the answer is yes.
So the first book was mainly the study and the survey, and the second book is leading more into the the actual experiences.
Yeah, because the first book was done because I had this this experience where I was taken out of my body in the middle of a traffic jam, where I was shown all of the contact modalities. Okay, all the contact modalities are all the different ways that humans are piercing the veil of our reality, of our skin of reality, and we're interacting with other dimensions, intelligences of other dimensions. Okay, and there's many different ways that this is happening with humans. It's happening via UFO contact. It's happening via near-death experiences. It's happening via out-of-body experiences. When people see ghosts and spirits, hallucinogenic journeys. You know, you take some ayahuasca or DMT or mushrooms. All of a sudden, half of the people are talking to a being, to an intelligence, like saying, "Look, Giles, you're fucking up, man. You're fucking up. You're gonna lose your woman. You know, if you keep on acting that way." And it's telling you all the shit that you're doing, bad stuff, and to change. You know. And you're like in this DMT trip, you know, like, holy shit, man, you know, he's right. You know, whatever that mantid being that's appearing right in front of me, you know, mantid being, you know, sits down in a lotus position with me and is telling me all of this shit, you know. And so you're like, what the fuck is going on? But this mantid being is correct, you know, everything. How did he know all that stuff, you know? So it's like it points out other things, you know, about you. It's like these internal pathways, guidances, okay? Again, half of the people that take hallucinogens have these types of experiences, but yet these are experiences which have tons of commonalities with all of the other ones. So I had this experience where I was shown all of this. I was given all the information. I think I might have talked a little bit about that last time I was on the show. I don't know if I recall or not that I did say that. So when that happened, I said, okay, if all of these are all interrelated, we know tons of stuff about NDEs. We know tons of stuff about OBEs. For ghosts and spirits, they've been written about, you know, since the dawn of mankind, you know. What we know nothing about is the UFO contact experience, like I articulated earlier. So then that Saturday, I woke up, like I told you, I had a whole outline of what we'd be doing. So I typed out 5 pages of a whole methodology of how do we do the world's first academic research study on UFO contact experiences. I sent it off to Mary Rodwell, Edgar Mitchell, Rudy Schild. All 3 of them said, wow, Ray, this is fantastic, unbelievable. So within a few days, we had Dr. John Climo, we had Kathleen Martin, we had Leo Sprinkle, we had tons of other people, you know, to join us to do this work. But it all came initially about me having that out-of-body experience where I was shown all these things. But the overall objective was not about UFOs, was that we need to get that little puzzle, that little piece of the puzzle. So then we could talk about this next book. Okay? So what this next book is introducing this concept of the relationship between consciousness, the nature of our reality, okay, which is consciousness based, and all of the paranormal contact modalities. What I don't like to use that word paranormal because it makes it seem like it's not normal. That's why I just use the word contact modalities. So what we're doing is we're linking up the contact modalities with consciousness, and we're showing that it's all one phenomenon. Why? Because it's consciousness-based phenomenon. Okay, and as you can see in our picture there, okay, we have the biggest letters, near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, UFOs, and spirits. If you take the first letter, which is the largest, okay, in Greek, that means nous, means knowledge, wisdom.
I do have a chart that you sent me as well.
Yeah, that's sort of like we're trying to illustrate that point in many, many different ways. Like all these different experiences need to be seen as one, and that consciousness is the glue that's holding it all together. Okay, but let's get back to the book, because the book, NOUS, means knowledge of wisdom or wisdom. Okay, these are the 4 major contact modalities. Okay, all the other ones that we have here: remote viewing, hallucinogenic experiences, apports, prayers, orbs, human-initiated contact experiences, commonly called CE5, telepathy, precognition, all of these ESP-related type of psi phenomenon, they're all one phenomenon. okay? But yet humans are studying them as separate and distinct. Like, for example, I went to, this is about 5 years ago, to the International Association of Near-Death Studies, their annual conference in Orlando, Florida. So that's the annual event for the largest organization on NDEs in the world, okay? I spoke to the leaders of that group about, this hypothesis, which is shared by all of the academics in our group. Now it's over 25 academics, PhD academics. And they're like, what the hell does near-death experiences have to do with out-of-body experiences? Okay. I could understand that a lot of people, when they die, a lot of them pop out of their body, they see their dead body underneath. But in terms of just people having these spontaneous OBEs, what the hell does it have to do with NDEs? What the hell does seeing ghosts and spirits have to do with NDEs? What the hell does UFOs have to do with NDEs? Well, a whole boatload of people have had NDEs afterwards. They see deceased people. Okay. They start having out-of-body experiences, et cetera, et cetera. Our book documents that. So what we're trying to do in our book is to show that all of these phenomenon has to stop being viewed as separate things. You go to a UFO conference, that's all they talk about, UFOs. They don't talk about anything paranormal, okay? And UFOs, they basically look at it from a materialist perspective, a material UFO, okay?
Yeah.
And so our perspective is that this is outside of our material reality, okay? We're dealing with stuff that's outside of space-time. It's a manipulation. As a matter of fact, the most famous researcher in ufology, okay? I consider two pioneers, okay? One is J. Allen Hynek, and the other one is Jacques Vallée, okay? J. Allen Hynek, towards the last few years of his life, he totally changed around. He started off as a total skeptic of UFOs. He didn't believe in that stuff. It's all bullshit. It's all swamp gas, okay? Later on, he's like, okay, this is real, okay? We still don't understand what it is, but he came at it from a materialist perspective. These are physical crafts, okay? Later on, towards the end of his life, he says, no, I don't think that they're ETs coming from a physical planet. I think this is all consciousness-based, okay? So this is towards the end of his life, the last 3 years of his life.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yes, I've got his recording, a videotape of him saying all of that, okay? And then Jacques Vallée basically took the mantle from that because they were very, very close friends, very close colleagues, okay?
Yep.
And since, the late 80s, but really took off in the 90s with his book, Passport to Magonia, Dimensions, The Invisible College. Vallée said that these are not ETs coming from a physical planet. It's way, way more complicated than that. And he talked about that the UFO contact phenomenon involves a manipulation of space-time, and we just don't understand space-time. See, so he clearly knows that, okay? And he's talked about it for many, many, many years. But yet ufology has totally ostracized this man, okay? Because he's a weirdo. He's talking about, manipulation of space-time. He's talking about the paranormal, but yet that's what his research has done, because he's gone all over the world to meet with people. But what his limitation is, Vallée's limitation, is that he's mainly focused on the UFO phenomenon, okay? He's never dabbled into near-death experiences, in terms of out-of-body experiences, in terms of the contact modalities. Okay, but he clearly indicates that, look, this is not about UFOs, like the title of our first book, this is beyond UFOs, that this involves the manipulation of space-time, and these are not, he doesn't adhere to the ET hypothesis. Okay, so what our book is going to be doing is, as I said before, combining two things. One is we're going to be presenting different theories and explanations of the nature of our reality. What is consciousness? And then we're going to be presenting theories of these different contact modalities, but we're going to be presenting it from a totally different perspective. Okay. For example, UFOs. Our book is divided into 4 volumes. Okay. The first 2 volumes are theoretical in nature. These are primarily, academics, medical doctors, and researchers. They might not have a PhD to them, but these are people that have been involved in research most of their lives. Okay, people that are like academics, they just don't have that PhD back to them. And so, for example, in that area of UFOs, that's one of the topic areas, we have 11 articles. Okay, all the 11 articles are totally radical viewpoints of what is the UFO phenomenon. I mentioned to you earlier, Dr. Joseph Birx. This is a retired medical doctor. He started doing CE5 with Stephen Greer in 1992. Okay. After that, he found out Stephen Greer was stealing money. The guy had the biggest ego in the world, treated people like shit. And he says, I want nothing to do with Stephen Greer in 1998 and left. But he still maintained doing the CE5 with other groups, mainly with people from Grupo Rama, that are originally from Peru. They were the ones that Stephen Greer stole everything from. They were doing CE5 since the mid-70s, particularly Sixto Paz and Grupo Rama and my friend Giorgio Piacenza. Okay, that's a separate discussion.
You're not a Stephen Greer fan then?
Please. This guy owns $2 million homes. Okay. He's made tons of money off of his project. Okay. Millions of dollars off of his projects. And yet he hasn't worked a day in his life as a medical doctor since 1992. So how's a guy that's never worked as a medical doctor, get to pay $600,000 deposit on a second home in Washington, D.C.? Okay. You tell me that. Okay, here I am. I'm an attorney and I live month to month, trying to put my daughter through college and things like that. So, but anyway, getting back. So Dr. Joseph Burks has been heavily involved in all of this. And he's just an example of one of the many articles on the topic of UFOs. Dr. John Klimo, one of our co-editors, wrote an article on UFOs. Again, a total radical perspective. Dr. Michael Grosso, another retired professor, is a professor of philosophy. He's written 10 books on the paranormal. He himself saw 3 UFOs. When he got his PhD from Columbia University. Just a quick story. He was on the roof of his apartment building in New York City, Lower Manhattan, and there was these 3 gigantic orbs the size like Volkswagens. They were dancing to the beat of John Coltrane, okay? On top of the local Catholic church. There's a dome, okay? They were on top of the dome of the local Catholic church, and they were like, let's say, for example, the song was the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Okay, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, and there was 3 gigantic orbs that were dancing to the rhythm of that sound, of the music. Okay, and then after the song played out, all of a sudden, these 3 gigantic orbs, the size of Volkswagen, then took up, towards Upper Manhattan at skyscraper level, and then eventually faded out, So this guy's a major experiencer, okay? So he wrote a chapter on an analysis of the UFO contact phenomenon, but from a spiritual and a psychic phenomenon, okay? And again, those are just 3 examples that I mentioned of articles just on the UFO topic from a radically different perspective. We also have chapters on near-death experiences, on out-of-body experiences, on ghosts and spirits, all from a different perspective now. And so the first 2 volumes, as I said before, are theoretical in nature, where we outline the intellectual, theoretical foundation of our argument. Then in the volumes 3 and 4, these are chapters that are written by experiencers, okay? These are individuals that have had, almost all of them, more than 3 or 4 different experiences. Okay, I think I might have talked about one before, Dr. Melinda Greer. This is a woman, she's seen 12 UFOs. She's had 2 near-death experiences, several out-of-body experiences. She's seen Sasquatch 3 times, ghosts and spirits, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So this woman is a medical doctor. Okay, she's about my age. And
these people that you do you meet them face to face when you decide to put them in the book with their stories? Do you have a meet up with them, or?
Yeah, most of these people I've either met them face to face, and for example, I will meet them at a conference, and like, for example, like this medical doctor. Okay, all of a sudden she pops up at a table that I've got, and she started telling me about her experiences, and I'm like, holy shit, it's unbelievable. And then I said, at lunchtime, you want to hang out at lunch and let's talk, right? So at lunchtime, she then goes into some of her details. I'm like, oh my God, and like with my friend Alberto in Miami, how I met him, it was via his wife, and his wife was telling me all this stuff, and then I finally invited them to our house, and my wife and I started telling stories. They started telling our stories. And you see, these people are real, Then I went over to their home, and he showed me all of the pictures of the DEA, the the awards he got at DEA, and he would tell me tons of DEA related stories about, Noriega was flying in, propeller planes filled with cocaine, and how he did it and the people involved. And, so that this guy is real, but then he's telling you all this crazy shit. And his wife, the same thing, And then after you've done this with hundreds of people, you get to see that, my goodness, so many people are having these really highly unusual cases, but yet all these people, they never want to talk to anybody else. Okay. Most of these people, they're in a book. They've never mentioned to anyone else.
And a lot of the cases are very similar.
Yes. Very, very similar. I mean, well, they're all very, very different, but yet they have similar constructs. Just like for a near-death experience, okay? If you review the near-death experience literature, you will realize that all these near-death experiences, they're very, very unique, but they have commonalities. For example, okay, of floating out of your body and seeing your body underneath, that's a commonality, okay? Going through a tunnel or a bridge or some other type of transport pathway, that's another commonality, okay? Of seeing deceased relatives, another commonality. Telepathic communication, another commonality. Having a life review where you're being shown, your life, that's another commonality that occurs. I think it was like 1 out of every 4 people. Okay. Now the life review is all very different. The format of how it works, very, very unique. Some people get like all at once, like boom, 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 all these flashes, okay, of their life. Other people get disjointed. Other people, it's short and sweet. Other people, like my father, he said he was up there 20 or 30 years. He remembers all the details, of like you were in another place for 20, 30 years. It's like all of a sudden someone takes you, okay, sequesters you, brings you to Saudi Arabia, someplace like that, and you can't leave the airport. You got to stay in Saudi Arabia for 20 years. And all of a sudden you manage to get back into the UK and you see your wife, and she's the same age, nothing has changed. And you're like, I need to tell you what happened in Saudi Arabia. I was there for 20 years. That was like my father. So the point that I'm getting at is that it was all quite unique. Okay. But there's similarities. Same thing with the UFO contact phenomenon that I told you about. They're all so different, but yet so unique.
Would you say that you've become any closer to figuring out what the phenomena is?
I have my suspicions, my hypotheses of what it is. Okay. And I think the riddle to solve it was not something that came like super quick. Okay. But I think the way to get a good understanding of beginning to solve what's going on is by truly understanding the near-death experience phenomenon. Okay. What does that tell you? Okay. The near-death experience phenomenon really outlines a lot of the previous philosophical thoughts, like from India, the Vedic tradition, from Buddhism, okay, from a lot of Middle Eastern, traditions. They all talked about that there exists a universal mind, a God, but the God is more mind than anything, okay, not physicality. It's not like the Judeo-Christian tradition, okay, and that we are living inside another reality, a greater reality, okay. That's what a lot of the Indian tradition, Taoism, Hinduism, Buddhism,
Almost like a natural matrix.
Like a matrix, exactly. Okay, they are describing in different terminology. We are living inside like a matrix reality. Okay, as a matter of fact, we have an article, a 66-page article, written by Dr. Tom Campbell. Okay, and he has this book called My Big Toe. Again, a huge book. Okay, My Theory of Everything. Okay, it's all. I don't know if you ever heard of Robert Monroe, one of the early pioneers in out-of-body research.
No.
Okay, he was, I would say, probably the first person to really publicize on a worldwide basis the phenomenon of near-death experiences. Okay, he was Robert Monroe's guinea pig. Okay, because he was a physicist, and he would conduct experiments with Robert Monroe because he had been having a lot of out-of-body experiences when he was younger, and then he eventually learned how to control these things, and he could pop out of body at will. So he's been going out of his body for 40 years. So out of body, he would do these controlled experiments as a physicist on the nature of our reality. And what he wrote in that big, gigantic book, and what he wrote in our article, is that we're living inside a matrix reality. Okay, and it's much more elaborative than that. Okay, so that's going to be another article that's going to be in our book. So what I suspect is happening to us is that, yes, a lot of the ancient mystical traditions, the Vedic tradition, Buddhism, Taoism, et cetera, that talked about this phenomenon in terms of a universal mind, I think that's correct. And now most physicists, Rudy and Claude Swanson, and we have several other PhD physicists in our group, they said, Ray, if you graduate today with a PhD in theoretical physics, you will finish being an adherent to a multiverse theory. I don't know if you've heard of string theory. Okay, string theory.
Yep.
Michio Kaku, the Japanese American, is on TV all the time in all these specials, all these shows. He's one of the leading researchers on string theory. Okay, I'm not into physics or anything like that, but my understanding is that there's string theory and there's superstring theory. One has there's 10 or 11 dimensions, and another one up to 22 dimensions. Okay, so and that's the leading paradigm in theoretical physics, which is string theory now. Then there's many worlds theory, started by this very famous physicist, Hugh Everett. Again, it's many dimensions. So the point is that these physicists understand that we live in multiple dimensions. Okay, but yet the average person out in the street is totally clueless of these things. Okay, so what we're doing is to show that, look, these parallel phenomena is part of what these physicists are talking about. These are multi-dimensional experiences that we're inside a much more greater reality. And the ancients knew this stuff. They wrote about it. Okay, except they wrote it from a more of a mystical, tradition. Okay, but these are what experiencers are talking about. Okay, in all of the literature. So that's what the book is about, except we're doing it through science, we're doing it through academia, research, and at the same time, we're doing through the testimony of these experiencers. We have over 60 articles by experiencers.
You speak about all the positive of this, but you did say earlier on in the show that there is a negative.
Yes, for example, one of the articles in our book, I invited to be part of our research committee, the CCRI, this man who started off as a Roman Catholic priest in a monastery. Okay, and so this man, at a very young age, began to research paranormal stuff, but more out of ghosts and spirits, poltergeists, and attachments, negative beings. Okay, and so in his many years of doing this work, he has encountered that negative aspect of it. Also, we have at least 3 people that wrote chapters in our book that wrote about that. Okay, about these negative attachments. And there was one particular individual that didn't want to go near it. He didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. And so I was after him for over a year to write a separate chapter just on that negative attachment. And, he wrote our first chapter, for us. And then finally, I convinced him to write a separate chapter on that because he was shit scared of all these things. Okay. And let me just give you an illustration. Okay. And again, a lot of people might confuse a lot of these things as ET, but I think it's way more complicated than that. Let me give you an illustration. Paul Eno was studying to be a Catholic priest. He went to high school in a monastery. He went to become a priest in a monastery, and he eventually gave up, being a priest. Okay. And but for 50 years he's been researching these things, the poltergeists, ghost spirits, the paranormal, that sort of thing. And so he said one of his early experience was he was 20 years old, and he was had been interested in the paranormal up until that point. So this old priest, who's not one of his teachers, he already had retired, and he saw them in the hallways in this big monastery. And so one day, this old priest came up to him and he says, "I found out that you have an interest in the paranormal." And so Paul, we interviewed him just a few days ago in Boston. So Paul, for a documentary that we're doing. And so Paul said, yes, I do have this interest in the paranormal. And mind you, he's 20 years old. He's a young kid. And so the priest says, "Okay, good. Meet me downstairs on the first floor at 7 o'clock in the morning on Saturday." So he said, "Okay, so he thought he was going to give his last rites to someone that's dying or something like that, But no, he brings him to a mental hospital, one of these we used to call insane asylums, where they locked up all the crazy people, And so he walked into this room.
Or the not so crazy.
Yeah, And so and they outlawed that in the United States. They used to lock these people up, all their lives. Very cruel institutions. But anyway, there was a young 17-year-old girl that had her hands tied to a chair and her legs were tied to a chair. Okay. They had an orderly, one of these strong men there dressed in white, like you see in the movies and stuff. And they had a doctor and a nurse was there. Okay. The doctor had a tape cassette. Okay. So what they were doing was an exorcism. So you have this medical doctor in this crazy nut house, okay, was allowing this priest to come in to do exorcisms, right? And so Paul was describing that the whole ritual of it is like a whole ceremony. You have to do it in a very structured way and sequencing and, all of that stuff. So he was talking about all that. And then he said, all of a sudden, the young girl looked at him right in his face and started talking in a foreign language, okay? No one knew what that language was, okay? And then the priest finished the exorcism. And then a few days before Paul was finishing the semester and was going to go off to his parents, like for the summer or something like that, certain time off that he had. And so the priest gave him a cassette tape and gave him a translation of what was translated. Okay, they gave it to a university where someone found out what that language was, and they said that language was Malaysian. It was called Malay. Okay, from Indonesia. Okay,
yeah.
And then they translated it, and the recording was when that little girl was looking at him straight in his face. Okay, because he snickered. Here's this, this girl trying to be like the Exorcist. What's this bullshit? So he's thinking that in his head. And he started smirking, right? So the translation of when that little girl was looking right at his face and talking to him in his foreign language, the literal translation was, "Paul, don't ever underestimate me. Because I was there when you were 7 years old, when your father blew his brains out right in front of you, and I'm the one that told him to do it." Now, isn't that freaky?
Shit.
Okay? He said, if he would have found out that that's what she said back then, he would have shit in his pants while that was taking place. Okay. Because he said that the chair was like levitating and stuff like that, and it was like paranormal shit. Was like the temperature got, not super cold like in a refrigerator, but you could sense the temperature change, So he was freaking out. But once he got that tape, he never returned back to that monastery. He quit being a priest. Okay? So, I mean, the point that I'm getting at here is an intelligence that could either read his mind, and that's what I suspect is going on here. Not that being was there when his father literally blew his brains out. But here's you have an intelligence that was reading his memory thoughts, like the zeros and ones, the binary code that we have in the back. Okay, it's all information. Okay, just like when I called down that UFO, I heard my daughter's voice. Okay, "Daddy, you and Mommy have seen UFOs. Next time you see UFOs, you call me, Daddy. Don't forget. Don't forget." First of all, my daughter never said that. That's number one. Secondly, I'd never seen a UFO before. That was my first UFO. But yet that was planted in my mind, like my daughter was talking to me. And now, many years later, the way I see what happened to me was that whatever this intelligence that I was dealing with, that did that holographic projection. Mind you, 15 minutes that I called down that UAP, it appeared. 15 minutes. So it was like instant. Rey Hernandez calling it down, boom, 15 minutes later it appears. That's how it usually works. Okay. And so what I figured out was that whatever this intelligence was that interacted with me, and I know it was holographic projections, okay, he was able to get into my memory banks, upload my daughter's communication and voice patterns, okay, able to scramble a sentence together, reload it back to me, like my daughter's telling me this. See what I'm telling you? How complicated this shit is. Okay.
Yeah. When we're talking about UFOs, you don't think of those as actual craft with something inside?
Oh,
Do you
ETs? No.
do you think
Not
of
at all.
that
Not
as
at all.
just like a shape in the sky?
No.
Just
These are, as I said before, they come from other realities, other dimensions, whatever this intelligence is. Now, the whole complexity to all of this, and this is what had Alan Hynek totally befuddled and Jacques Vallée totally befuddled. These experiences are both physical. You see the being. Okay. You see a UAP. Okay. But yet at the same time, you know it's also psychic. It's consciousness based. And they wrote about that, both Alan Hynek and Vallée. So that's the riddle of it. And it still remains a riddle. So we don't know where that line is separated. I mean, are some of these beings like the short grays, are they really, really real? They're not holographic projections? Or is everything a holographic projection? Okay. That's sort of how I interpret it now. Okay. Because everything that we see around us is an illusion for us, for entertainment, for us to grow and to make mistakes, commit errors, to start wars, to kill people, for us to make our mistakes. And when we go back to God, to source. Okay. So this is like a virtual reality. So by that definition, everything that we see, all the five senses that you learn in cognitive neuroscience and stuff, that's what consciousness is. Okay. The five senses, that's it. All of this really is an illusion. Why? Because we're living inside this matrix reality. Okay. So the grays that we're interacting with, these are all stimulus to interact with us, to be able to change us. Just like how we changed in that book. Remember, I went through all those like 12 different statements, how these people change. Okay. I think that's the ultimate goal of what's happening with us, with the UFO contact phenomena, with the out-of-body experiences, with the near-death experiences, is that they're showing us that our reality is not what it is. It's something much, much more complicated. And in that process, we begin to reevaluate the nature of our reality. We begin to reevaluate spirituality. For many of us, we totally acquire spirituality. Okay. We begin to question our reality. Okay. And as I showed you before, that's how most of these people change. Not only the NDE folks, but the UAP folks, the out-of-body experiencer folks. Okay. Now, most of the people that see ghosts and spirits, the vast majority of them don't see them repeatedly. You might see them a few times. And then some people just see ghosts and spirits and nothing else. But the major experiencers that I'm talking about, they've had a little bit of everything. Okay. So these are the people that totally are transformed. Like, as I said before, Whitley Strieber. Okay. You look at a man who is totally horrified. Are you familiar with him and his writings?
Yeah. I've never read the book. I watched the film.
Okay.
As you know, I'm very dyslexic. I'd love to read it.
Okay. Well, here's a man who basically in his first few books was all about how horrific this experience was, and then towards the last really 15 years of his life was like a transition. And now the last 5 years of his life is like Mr. Love and Light. You can't have a greater Mr. Love and Light than Whitley Strieber now. Okay. So, but he's just a classic example of these people that took our surveys. Okay. They start off having these perceived scary experiences. Not all of them. As I said, it was only 37%. Okay. But then all of a sudden, they have additional experiences. Their experiences change and they begin to question their lives, their reality. So this is what's taking place. I think this is the purpose of all of this, is that it's as Mary Rodwell says, we're becoming awakened. That's the title of her first book, Awakening. Okay, we're being awakened to the true nature of our reality, and that is that we are eternal spiritual beings. And once you start moving in that direction, you're not going to go back. Okay, all of a sudden you have a negative experience, and then that whole new perspective, you get to see that from a totally different limelight. Totally different perspective.
So when somebody's talking about like physical craft, like for example, the Bob Lazar story, how do you look at a story like that?
I don't know. I have a very, very different perspective from most of these people in materialist mainstream ufology. Okay.
Yep.
As I said before, these experiences are very, very physical. Okay. So people see a physical craft. They see a physical being, like what I saw in my living room. Okay. That was an intelligence. I physically saw it, but it was an energy being, manipulating and moving, so it's very, very physical to me.
I think what I'm asking, do you think there are physical crafts?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Again, part of me says that so many people are seeing these physical crafts. Okay. There must be something to it, the physicality of it. Okay. But another part of me says, no, this is all part of the holographic projections that people are seeing. Okay. Now, in terms of these whistleblowers, okay, all these people are all into all these whistleblowers, whistleblower this, whistleblower that, whatever. Okay. I had very personal information, two of these very well-known whistleblowers. Okay. And let me tell you some background about that, so at least you can get an understanding of it, and some of your audience members can get an understanding of this. Okay. There was this very well-known man in the 1990s. He appeared in these videos. I forgot what they were called. They had like this it wasn't a panther or a leopard. It was one of these cheetahs. They had like these cheetahs as part of their introduction. It was a man and a woman. I think he was from the UK. She was from the US. And they interviewed tons of whistleblowers. I forgot that series that they had, but it was these are older videos of interviews that they did with so-called whistleblowers. Okay. One of these individuals, his name was Rob Burlage. Okay. So Rob Burlage, when you listen to him, and you didn't hear to the details he was saying, but he just listened to what the man was, how he expresses himself. You would think that he came from the South Bronx and he was a high school dropout. Okay. Dumb as rocks. Okay. But but yet in the interviews, he says that he's got 4 PhDs, all in the hard sciences. Okay. Now, if you know of anyone that ever got a PhD in the hard sciences, first of all, it's many, many years, and they worked their ass off, okay, to get that 1 PhD. Okay. So this guy said he had 4 PhDs. Okay. Number one. Number 2, he said he was the only one that took care of this captured alien called J-Rod. Okay. Yeah. He's the only one that had access to it. No one else. And he said this about J-Rod, that about J-Rod, the little ET, tons of stuff. So these people were taking videos of him. They were eating that shit left and right. Okay. They were being spoon-fed bullshit after bullshit after bullshit. And everyone that watched that video, believed all this stuff. Okay. Well, part of the supposedly worked at Area 51. Okay. Now, another person that they interviewed there, okay, he was the man that so-called initiated the secret space program at Area 51. Okay. Bill Tompkins. Okay. Very, very well known with all these conspiracy theorists, the secret space program type of people. Okay. And so they interviewed Bill Tompkins and said, oh, yeah, Rob Burlage, I can vouch for him. He works at Area 51. Yes, he's the only one that's taking care of J-Rod. He's the only. Yes, he does have 4 PhDs, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Now, so for a long time, I was like, this is some weird shit, I couldn't make any judgments about it. You just hear these stories and you digest it, But I grew up in New York City, and parts of New Jersey, which are, working class, hard, hardcore street kids, and your antenna is always up. Okay. So when I would listen to these folks, my bullshit antenna just lifted up to the roof, these people sound like they're bullshitting, So, but I didn't have anything to back me up. Well, here's a couple of things. Okay. So I met the ex-director of MUFON, that guy that had criminal charges against them for soliciting an underage prostitute. Okay, I don't know if you heard about that.
Yep.
The man's name is Jan Harzan. So I don't know whether, he did do that, whether someone accused him of that and to set him up or whatever, I don't give a shit about that. Okay. What I do know is that I met him at a conference in outside of Boston with Dr. Rudy Schild, the professor of astrophysics from Harvard. Okay. So we went out for lunch and for dinner, and we talked about what we were doing. I already had talked to Rudy beforehand, and we decided that what we want to be able to do is to let him know that we're not competition. We're not a threat. What we're doing is something totally different that MUFON has zero interest in, because MUFON is a materialist organization. They care about UFOs, physical UFOs, physical reports about UFOs. What we were doing is totally different. Okay. And so we had a discussion with that, and he got to see what we were doing. He got to know all these academics that were part of our work, very legitimate people, very legitimate organization. So a few months later, I got an email from him. He says, Ray, do you have any PhD biochemists in your organization? Because he knew that we had tons of PhDs. Okay. So he said, we've been trying to find out who can help us with a project, but we can't find a PhD biochemist that's interested in working with us. So I responded back and I said, well, we've got 2 PhD biochemists as part of our organization. So he responded back. He says, Ray, if I send you something, so this is a classified document, you have to agree you're not going to send it to anyone else, make it publicly known, and just to send it to those 2 people. And if you can get them to analyze that document and give their feedback. So I said, sure, of course, So he sent me, it was a document, 55 pages. On the top, it was stamped MUFON classified. Okay. Like it was some top secret bullshit, It was their own stamp that they used, And so what it was an autopsy report that this guy, Dan Burridge, remember the guy that had the 4 PhDs, the only one that took care of that little J-Rod ET,
Right.
It was an autopsy report. After the being died, he supposedly did an autopsy of it. And it was his report, right? So I sent it off to these 2 PhD biochemists, okay? And these are not, what do you call it? Those people that do autopsy reports or anything like that. They didn't have training that, but they knew about the chemicals. They know about procedures. They knew a lot about the underlying process behind it. Right? So both of them, one wrote 16 pages, the other one wrote 6 pages. And they both said, Ray, you got to be fucking kidding me. This paper's a joke. It's like a high school kid trying to pull a prank, like this is real, but it said it's all bullshit. All the terminology is wrong. The procedures are wrong. The names, the spellings of the chemicals, procedures, the instruments. It was like, it was bullshit, and they wrote extensively. One person wrote 16 pages. So I sent it, and then I knew to myself, I said, this guy's a fucking bullshit artist. That guy, Rob Burlage, okay? And I knew it, and here's proof in the pudding right here, okay? So I sent the email back with the reports that these 2 PhD academics wrote, and I said, looks like your boy's a fucking fake, to Jan Harzan, right? And I never heard back from him again, because I basically ridiculed him. Yeah. I said, you're taking this shit as real. And here I am with 2 fucking PhDs, okay? They took a look at it and they said it's all fucking bullshit. And you're fucking believing all this crap, And I said, looks like your boy's a fake, He never responded back to me.
But people invest in people, and they don't.
And what it is that they use each other to leverage each other. Now, this guy, Bill Tompkins, okay, supposedly the founder of the secret space program. You have several prominent people in the UK that are like, followers of Bill Tompkins, okay? You have this guy, Michael Salla, who's written like a whole book about that whole bullshit, and you have literally his books sell by the thousands, and our academic research has sold like not even 100 copies, and yet he's on Gaia TV all the time, so that's the bullshit that sells. Okay. So Bill Tompkins. Okay. Jan Harzan, during that time period that I had given that information, all right, I found out that they were going to be having the MUFON conference, annual conference. They have it once a year. They were going to have it in Orlando, Florida. Okay. And I said, Jan, we're just finishing with our research study. We haven't published it, but we've got most of the data. We can get one of our academics that lives right outside Orlando, like an hour away. This man has a PhD in neuroscience. Okay. We can get him to go to the conference and make a presentation. Okay. You don't have to pay him anything. Okay. You don't have to pay for gas or hotel because he lives an hour away. All right. He didn't even bother calling me back or following up. Okay. So here we are with real data from real fucking scientists. And you know what was the topic of that MUFON annual conference? The secret space program. Okay. The secret space program. It was going to have a whole bunch of speakers just focusing on the secret space program. Okay. Now, this guy, Bill Tompkins, how do I know about him? Okay. First of all, he already had said publicly in all these interviews that he vouched for this guy, Dan Burridge. Okay. Oh, yeah, he worked at Area 51. Yeah, he's got 4 PhDs, and all of that crap. Okay. So what does that make him if he's vouching for a guy that's a bullshit artist? Okay. Well, working with our group, our committee, there was a woman that was a relative of this man. He's now deceased. Okay. But she was a relative of this guy. Her husband said, I know this guy. He's a bullshit artist. Okay. He did his time in the military, whatever, 25 years or whatever it was. He retired, but he was a fucking grunt. Okay. Yes, he did work for Area 51, but as a laborer. Just like, for example, I had my ex-brother-in-law. The guy joined the Navy when he was 17 years old. Okay. Very, very smart guy. He took those entrance exams and he tested off the charts. So they put him into those programs where they inspect nuclear weldings on submarines. Okay. And so that's what he did for 20 years in the Navy. He would do the inspections of these nuclear submarines. Okay. And he would work on repairing these boats and stuff. So this highly classified, top secret shit. Right. But the guy's no fucking PhD in electrical engineering. Okay. He did his time. After he finished, a subcontractor hired him on to do the same work as a classified, top secret military intelligence, clearance that he needed. This is the same work that he's doing. Same thing with this guy, Bill Tompkins. Okay. She told me tons of story of this guy. When he says he was here, he was actually there. When he says this, he was that. When his son, because his son got all into it as well. When his son said that he was here, the guy was a fucking drug addict. He was with us for 6 months because he was recovering from his drug addiction. So she was telling all these intimate details. So now I had it on this guy, Bill Tompkins, the head of the so-called secret space program, and then I had with this guy, Rob Burridge, and they were both backing up each other. Oh, yeah, I know Bill Tompkins. Yeah, Bill headed up this reverse engineering and all of this crap, in the interviews.
So many snake oil salesmen.
So that's what I'm getting at. You see what I'm getting at? Is that this whole whistleblower stuff, I don't know about all these other people, but for example, okay, let me give you another example of the secret space program bullshit, okay? Here you have Captain Randy Kramer, okay? I was being interviewed by this guy in the UK. He had a show. Okay, it was on the paranormal and UFO and stuff like that, right? So he had me on the interview, and then on the Skype came immediately after me this guy, Captain Randy Kramer. This guy that was like a high school dropout. He said he got brought into the military, into this ultra secret military program, where he was beamed up to Mars to protect the Mars colony. And while he was there, he killed 10,000 reptilians. Okay. And he was up there like for 20 years, and then all of a sudden he was beamed back down. But when he was beamed back down, they regressed him back to his normal age. Okay. People were eating and swallowing that shit up. Okay.
People
Same thing
just
with,
people love the theater.
same thing with Corey Good. Okay, so I mean, can you fucking imagine? A guy's a fucking high school dropout. Same thing with Corey Good. Okay, high school dropouts, and they get enrolled into stuff that Edgar Mitchell with a fucking PhD from MIT. Okay, a pilot with Chuck Yeager's doing experimental flying of the first jets, military jets. These are the people that they selected for NASA and for Gemini and for these early space programs. They're not going to fucking get a guy who's a high school fucking dropout, taking tons of antidepressants, and all of a sudden he gets sent up to Mars 3 times, each time for 20 years. So he's been aged,
Yeah, going back to Edgar, because we have about another 10 minutes left, Ray.
Yeah, no, look at the time. Sorry about that.
No, don't worry about it, mate. So you was with Edgar through his final days.
I was there about 2 days before he died in a hospital. I had called his home, and he had an assistant there that helped him out. She was like a cleaning lady, but also helped him with some office stuff. I totally forgot her name. So she picked up the phone. She knew who I was. And she told me Edgar is gravely ill. He's in this particular hospital. Okay. And so the hospital, they won't tell you anything if you call, about a patient, So I just went over there. I found out the address. I went to the hospital. And I'm here to visit Edgar Mitchell. They told me where he was. And so he was very, very bad. He looked like Mike Tyson might beat the shit out of him. He had black and blue all over his face, his arms and stuff like that. He said that he had fallen down. And Edgar had a walker. So he had problems towards the later months of his life, mobility. Okay. And so he was in rough shape. And so I remember when I was there, I said, this guy's not going to improve, And so I called Dr. Rudy Schild. They were very close friends. And I asked Edgar's permission, first of all, and he said yes. So I called Rudy, and they said their goodbyes, basically, And so Edgar and I talked about near-death experiences, because a lot of people don't know that Edgar co-founded another organization called Eternia. And Eternia deals with the afterlife, with the survival of consciousness. Okay? And it was founded by John Audette, who one of the co-founders of the International Association of Near-Death Studies, and also the brain surgeon from who taught at Harvard. Eben Alexander, Dr. Eben Alexander, very, very famous NDE experiencers. So that organization was co-founded by the three of them. So I was talking about Edgar about NDEs, just so he wouldn't fear, what was coming. And then he was like, yes, Ray, yes, I know. Like, listen, kid, been there, done that. You don't need to tell me about that. I'm ready. I'm prepared, So
he wasn't scared of.
Well, we didn't get into those detailed discussions, but at least I wanted to bring up the topic of NDEs. And he was telling me, like, don't go near that area. I know about that, because Edgar knew much more about NDEs than I could ever hope to know as well. He was a brilliant man. Now, towards the latter years of his life, it didn't show it because he started to get dementia. But when I first met Edgar, he was like, you're talking to a genius,
God rest his soul. So the book is out, we see Feb?
Let's say February 1st. But in order to find out more information about the book and to get free chapters from our book, and the first book, Beyond UFOs, and this one, I will send you, more than 600 pages worth of writings. Just on this book alone is more than 400 pages, Beyond UFOs. Send me an email to info, INFO, at experiencer.org.
There you go, guys. If you want to get 400 on our pages for free, which
for free, no cost.
Go check it out. Now, I think that's really good to do that as well, mate. But this one is this one as big?
This is 4 times as big.
Wow.
It's going to have 4 books. as I said before. The first two are theoretical. Okay. So if you're not into theory at all, wanting to find out what might be going on with this phenomenon, and you just want to be entertained and read stories, just stick to volume 3 and 4. That's where the experiencer chapters are. That's when you have these people telling you about their crazy experiences, like that medical doctor that I told you about. There's literally more than 60. I haven't count exactly how many chapters there are from experiences, but I know there's more than 60.
And there is you mentioned during the show that there is a documentary coming, that you're working on a documentary?
Yes. I've been working on a documentary for 5 years. And the documentary is tentatively titled by the same name, A Greater Reality, One Man's Journey of Self-Discovery. Okay. And what it is, basically, it's about our book. It's about me, Rey Hernandez, trying to understand the nature of our reality and what's going on, with all of the contact modalities. So we interviewed, over 25 academics and medical doctors, lots of researchers that are not academics, and over 60 experiencers. Okay. And we interviewed them about their experiences. So it really is like a documentary flip side of our book.
Right. So it's like an introduction almost.
Yeah, the documentary is like the layman's introduction
Yeah.
of the complexities of the contact modalities and consciousness. And it's difficult for you to do that in an hour and a half, impossible. Let's put it to you this way. But hopefully what we can convince someone to say that, look, this is an ongoing series like Ancient Aliens. But Ancient Aliens, as you know, it's all bullshit, that stuff, But we're talking about real fucking aliens, real ghosts, real NDEs, real out-of-body experiences, And we're presenting people that are having all these experiences. And not just one, they're having many, many different types of experiences. So we could do, for example, like in an hour, break up half hour for one person, another half hour for another person. We could splice in a medical doctor, PhD academic, together with the testimony of the experiencer, and people talking about consciousness, the nature of our reality, all into a package. So like that, people are both entertained, but they're being educated. It's not going to be these ancient alien stuff, which is entertainment,
Yeah. And well,
or
everyone's got to start somewhere, Ray. These people that watch shows like mine. Even when I first started out looking into this, I dabbled in a couple of ancient alien episodes, and then I soon realized that they're just speaking about the same old shit.
Well, I mean, sometimes late at night when you can't get to sleep, all of a sudden you put the TV on at 2:00 and there's an ancient alien show. And I said, fuck it, man, until I get to sleep, let me watch this bullshit, about ancient Egypt, that it could have been built by ETs, and they go into all of that. Okay, it's entertaining, it eventually put me to sleep after an hour later, but, like most people, this is not reality. It's not what experiencers are dealing with. Okay. But yet these people have been on the tube for how long? More than 10 years,
That's it. So this for you, is this, you're never going to retire from this? Is this going to be something that you'll carry on doing?
I think I'll carry it on, but a lot of my friends have said, look, Ray, you've been busting your chops for 8 years now, almost nonstop. And you're 65 years old. There's going to come a time where you can't keep up this pace. But I'm still working. That's the problem. If I'm retired and I'm off retired someplace in Mexico, in a quiet village or some shit like that, then I can still do that if I have an internet,
Yeah, you'll still want to, but you're still going to keep the work up.
I mean, yeah, because no one can solve these riddles. Like the questions that you were asking me, there are no answers to this. It's just, it gives you more questions. Okay. But yet it's part of who I am, part of who you are. Once you, for example, once you've had an out-of-body experience, you pop out of your body, and then later on it happens again. Then eventually you learn how to control it, and now you're going to different dimensions, different realms. After that totally consumes your life. Totally consumes your life.
I think a lot of people in the chat, it will be, I guarantee you, Ray, there'll have been people that have had experiences of what you're talking about.
Yeah, because they're extremely common, except nobody talks about it.
They don't.
Yeah,
they don't.
How many people in your channel there have seen a ghost or a spirit? If you had like a little hand that would raise, if you have like 100 people that are watching it live, all of a sudden you see all these hands pop up.
Pretty much everybody I interview, Ray, has seen something.
Yeah, you see, so it's
all right. Anybody who I speak in, I say real life, that the channel is real life, but anybody I meet face to face,
they
family,
all got something.
Friends,
they all got something.
Everybody has something.
I am very open, and when I meet strangers, a lot of times, a majority of the times, it leads into something much, much bigger. Because, for example, you're at a supermarket, you're watching National Enquirer, all of a sudden there was like a haunted house, story or some shit like that, right? So I'm talking to the lady up front. I said, look at that. The article's about ghosts and spirits. I said, a lot of people laugh at that, but I think it's true. And then the lady turns around and says, I know it's true. Because I saw, my Aunt Mary, when I was a young kid, she was right in front of me. So then that starts a whole conversation, So tons of people. My mother had her own story. After that happened with my father, we started talking like a few days later about that. And she starts telling me that she was taking care of her mother who was dying of, what was that disease of the lungs? Pneumonia. No, it wasn't pneumonia. It was a bacterial infection that people had in the 30s and 40s. That penicillin was now public. Now it's called tuberculosis. I think it is tuberculosis. Okay, so she died when my mother was 16. So my mother was taking care of her. And so she had visitors, and one time was my mother's cousin. They were about the same age, which is her father was my grandmother's brother. Okay, my mother's uncle, right? So her mother told her, says, don't bring your cousin here anymore. And I said, why not? Did she do something to you? Is she bothering you? No. Every time she comes and visit me, my brother comes in spirit form and wants to cross me over. He says, I'm scared of him because, I'm seeing this ghost and spirit of my brother, Tell her don't come anymore. So this is my mother telling me this stuff. You see where I'm getting at? Everybody tells stories.
They do, mate. Well, Ray, we have run out of time, but I want to thank you very much for coming on the show. It would be great to get you on at some point with some other people that can maybe ask questions.
Sure. Not that I'm going to have any answers, but at least everything that I could say is based upon research,
Yes.
That we've done. And then if it's a guess, I'll take a guess, of what I think, Like you asked me, Ray, what the hell is going on?
You have no idea. Yeah. We have ideas.
We have our hypotheses of what might be going on.
Like I said, when I first started this channel, I was all about the nuts and bolts of these crafts, and now
oh no. This is like the title of our book, it's beyond UFOs,
Well, guys, go check out the links are in the description, and send Ray an email if you want to get some.
I'll give you half of that book for free.
And that is again, Ray.
And info@experiencer.org. Info@experiencer.org. And I'll send you our data chapters that talk about the quantitative surveys and analysis of that, of the qualitative survey data. And that's the analysis of the written responses. Then I'll send you a chapter on medical healings, chapter 6, written by Dr. Joseph Burks and Preston Dennett. And then I'll send you a peer-reviewed document, a peer-reviewed paper that got published in the Journal of Scientific Exploration, which is a journal that Jacques Vallée has published like 3 or 4 of his articles in. And Dean Radin, very famous people in these areas. So we got our paper published there. So it's not bullshit.
There you go, folks. And again, hopefully February time.
Yep, we're keeping our fingers crossed. February 1st.
Go check out Rey Hernandez. Thank you so much for joining us again, and I appreciate it. Good night. God bless, guys. Mind the books. Bye. I'm Alien Addict. Rey Hernandez.
All right.
What a start.